Hello, romance lovers. Today's story is called I Accidentally Tamed the Duke. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss out on more exciting stories. Someone's house is burning with a bright fire, not even giving the right to rescue. The wind helps the dark smoke to spread around to fill the space and notify the trouble. No one expected it, but the lady remained in the burning estate. Panic was hanging over, trying to cover everyone present. However, a miracle happened. The fair-haired girl is walking with Euclid. The beauty was none other than Urania, the eldest daughter of Count Vincent. Her facial features showed in advance that she was a rather kind and sweet person. Two strange people stand in front of the main character. It would seem that they only wish good, but the vile smiles on their faces prove the exact opposite. The voices note that the girl really did save the lady. The act was admirable, but it was completely unclear whether the heroine would benefit from it. She would have to pay for it. The frightened gaze switches to the jar with the elixir. The unpleasant-looking woman continues to hold the flask in her hands, saying that she should drink the potion. It will take away her sight, and her voice will fade. In her understanding, it seemed like the best option. For saving Euclid, she would have to become crippled. The lady continued to speak menacingly about the consequences, asking if the interlocutor understood what she was leading to, while the jar was being opened. The yellow mixture poured like a waterfall onto the young lady, who had to accept the rules of the game. Rumors of what had happened spread very quickly. Not even a week had passed before everyone was informed. That same day, Uranius's father offered to marry her to the lady's son, Cassius. The family of Duke Euclid quickly agreed to the proposal. It seemed that they could not refuse, and so after some time, the young couple got married. The couple's life was full of pleasure. They were always with each other, and everything was fine, if not for a letter from the girl's father, which spoke of the destruction of the protective artifact under the duchy. Confusion and sadness enveloped the heroine. She did not want to let her family down, so there was no choice. The girl had to carry out the order. The Duke shakes his interlocutor by the shoulders, accusing her of something. He can't wrap his head around how it happened that she dared to commit such a terrible act. The worst fears came true. The monsters broke through the barrier and filled the entire empire. There was nowhere to run. After all that had happened, the heroine began to be called none other than the unfortunate villain Urania. Sadness became an irreplaceable part of her soul. Immediately after everything that happened, the father turned away from the girl, who had first used her to commit a crime. The blonde could not help but reproach herself and everyone who had driven her to this. By taking the potion, the young lady signed her own death warrant. She was promised that the potion would only temporarily deprive her of her sight and voice, but the poison of the peric herb infected her blood, leading to irreversible consequences. The girl realized too late what was happening, and by that time the poison had already reached her heart. Lying on the bed and quietly dying, the lady thought of only one thing. Perhaps if she had a second chance, she would have done something completely different. Thoughts of exactly how she would have done it crept into her head. The best solution would be not to sacrifice herself for these monsters who would later betray. If the girl knew everything in advance, there would be a chance to start a new life filled with joy. It seemed that non-existence had already arrived, but the feelings were quite real. The hand lies on the soft bed, trying to feel at least something. The legs were without any shoes, and just like the rest of the body, they lay on the sheets. A familiar feeling. As she sits up, the girl looks at herself and realizes that she is alive. Confusion appears, blurring the soft features of her face. As soon as she turned around and looked around the room, memories came flooding back to the lady. It was none other than her room in the castle. Putting her palm to her cheek, the beauty wonders what happened. Just recently, she understood that the end had come for her, but now everything has changed. The hand involuntarily reaches for a sheet of paper lying on the nightstand. The letter testifies to the fact that now is exactly 4 months before the incident. Surprise takes over the whole inside. Very soon, it would be necessary to enter the cave of the duchy and destroy the artifact. It is not clear how this happened. Confusion quickly turns to joy. The beauty couldn't believe that her prayers had been answered, and she was given a second chance to do everything right. A second later, a wet rag flies into your face. A voice says it's time to wash. It's hard not to recognize who the owner is. Attempts to escape are useless. The maid Talia is a real pain. She mocks all the time, washed the Duchess with a floor rag, and humiliated her because she is blind. Vile hands grab her face, forcing her to sit still. The maid never recognized the lady as her mistress because she did not spend the night with the Duke. The strength was exhausted. It was useless to fight. Perhaps the best option was to give up, but the decision is not one of the easiest. The procedure is interrupted by a beautiful-haired person, speaking of the Duke's arrival in the capital. The exiled pigeon served as confirmation of this. Leaving Urenia alone, Thalia turns around disappointed, saying that everything happened faster than she thought. Even if she started preparing now, there was still not enough time. Memories pierced the consciousness like a sharp needle. Shortly before the trip to the cave, the Count ordered to stop using the potion, and after that, to destroy the thing. This time, everything will be completely different. The headache didn't give her any peace. The girl had long ago begun to notice that she had become dependent on the potion. She needed an antidote. Without the special plant Yang, it is impossible to fully recover. She needed to get it, but this can only be done through Vincent's personal doctor. She didn't want to fill her head with bad thoughts, but she'll have to do it someday anyway. Throwing off the obsession, the beauty decides to think about it later. The first and most important task was to escape from the Duke's estate. No matter how beautiful it was a trap. Cassius must never find out that the girl had been deceiving him all this time. Hands clutched the sheets. I didn't even want to think about the consequences, so I needed a clear plan. The determination on the young lady's face made it clear that she was in the right mood. The young people should get divorced before it was too late to take any action. Young Vincent arrived in the city quite unexpectedly. Preparations were not complete, but Urenia tried to carefully watch what was happening. Having not taken the potion for 3 days, she could vaguely discern the movements of the servants, eyes as if glassy, trying to catch at least some silhouettes. Talia continued to scream, notifying everyone that the owner had arrived. The stately and handsome man was none other than Cassius. Adjusting his dark gloves, the man walks through the room, causing everyone to freeze. Attention is drawn, so the guy, as if mockingly, asks if the heroine has heard that he has returned. According to him, perhaps she simply did not have enough time to hide in her room. Such remarks hurt, so her eyes drop to the floor. The blonde tries hard not to show it. She doesn't want to make the guy too angry and take the hit herself. The thought process is interrupted, and the next moment the girl does something rather strange. The shoes squeak on the floor, no longer together. By bowing her head and curtsying, Urena seemed to be honoring her master. This could not help but surprise even the woman herself. The young man's face shows no emotion. It is difficult to read even a word without knowing what to expect from him. Perhaps the young master did not appreciate the greeting, or perhaps the girl should have greeted him more tenderly. They are husband and wife, so why not? Deciding to change the subject, the man brought up the girl's clothes. She was wearing a nightgown, but according to him, she was not allowed to do this outside her room. The young lady clutches her robes with her hand while Cassius won't shut his mouth. The next jibe at her shaking is clearly not one of the best. Tears slowly filled her eyes. It seemed that soon there would be no time to hold back. The heroine really tried to find a dress, but her vision did not allow it. Without having time to say a word, being mute, the beauty hears another joke, and then Vincent turns around and heads in the other direction. Emotions were slowly pouring over the edge, intending to spill out. Someone's stern voice called out to the heroine, asking what she was doing here. Talia grabbed the fragile hand by the wrist, continuing to scream indignantly. She did not like this behavior. Bowing at the master's feet, the maid apologizes, saying that she thought Urenia was asleep and therefore did not keep an eye on her. It sounds false. Asking for punishment, the woman squeezes the poor mistress's hand even tighter. She doesn't care about the pain at all. Vincent indignantly glares at his interlocutor, asking what right she has to treat him like that. The maid only looks away in fear. Lavender eyes menacingly look at the interlocutor. Anger flows in a continuous stream, filling the entire space. Taking advantage of the moment, Urena snatches her wrist from Talia's hands, and then sadly, as if seeking support, looks at her husband. She does not understand such concern, but it is still worth finding out. Carefully examining the place, the girl notices that finger marks are still visible on the light skin. The pain tries to take over the whole body. Gently pointing to the place of pain, the blonde closes her eyelids. The maid begins to justify herself, saying that she did not grab her hard enough and that it is not her fault. She looks pathetic. The woman bows, expressing her sincere displeasure. This happens for the first time, and everyone around is shocked, but the main character does not need this. otherwise she may end up in a worse position. The decision is made rather quickly. Feet, shod in light shoes, glide across the parquet, heading towards the right person. The evil expression still makes you wonder if the Duke really meant what he said. There is no time to think. You need to keep going. A smile spreads across the blonde's face. Perhaps by trying to be a model wife, taking the initiative into her own hands, she will be able to get something in return. Coming even closer, Irina stops almost a step away from her husband. It would seem that they are looking at each other, but the man should not have known about the slow return of his sight. The surprised expression freezes as the owner notices that she can walk. He thought she could barely stand on her feet, but it turns out to be the opposite. The blonde doesn't know what to say. It's rather strange to try to get out of the situation, but she has to think of something. It's better to do it urgently. Another decision quickly flashes through his mind, and a fragile hand reaches out to the man, as if trying to grab onto something. The palm in a beautiful black glove was twice as big as expected. A careful look runs up the body. The girl shakes hands, which looks rather strange from the outside. It is difficult to imagine what her goal is. A slight anger is reflected in the man's eyes. He is not particularly irritated by such behavior, but it is quite difficult to understand what motives this girl is pursuing. Exhaling, the interlocutor begins his tirade. He noticed that the lady had changed, but he did not expect that she would completely lose her fear. Strange sensations looking at all this. The main character's facial expression changes in a split second. Not understanding what just happened and why this happened to her, she tries to calm down. Looking somewhere to the side, Aurelia, somewhere deep in her soul, understands that he is right. She is no longer afraid of anything, because she managed to die and end up here again. Carefully running her finger over her gloved palm, the beauty tries to start a conversation. She needs to see the clearing that was mentioned in the conversation a long time ago. Still not letting go of Vincent and trying to win the man over as much as possible, the interlocutor asks if this can be done. Pulling his limb out, the young man didn't even raise an eyebrow at any requests. The only question that remained was whether she had something in mind. Out of nowhere, a guy with gray hair appeared in front of the guests. Gail Desmond. He is none other than the butler of the Amon estate. The gaze switches to the man. The main character knows exactly who it is, because only this man treats her well without any reproaches or disobedience. Not wanting to even listen to the greetings, Cassius turns around, ordering everyone to return to their rooms. The blonde pays no attention, as she is curious as to whether the servant has fulfilled her request. A sweet boy turns to his mistress, intending to say something. Perhaps his words will be connected with a promise. The girl was right, because the butler says that they have cleared the way to the lake. The only downside is that they are not allowed to go too far into the forest. The unexpected detail in the form of a lake greatly surprised the heroine. She knew about the clearing, but did not think at all that there was a body of water somewhere nearby. The next step to meet the Duke again was what was needed. The blonde needed to know more about this place at any cost to be sure. The boy frowns, folding his arms across his chest and taking a belligerent pose. The question has been asked, and he is genuinely interested in why Urine is doing all this. Trying to pass herself off as a caring wife, the girl again grabs her husband's hand, saying that when she heard about his return, she asked him to clear the road of snow. The man would probably want to rest there. The effort was not appreciated because Vincent became wary. He suddenly became very curious about how she knew about the lake. Continuing to smile without showing it, the girl says that she noticed his habit of going there often. Everyone knew about it, including the servant. The lake is famous for the parrot grass that blooms there, which has poisonous properties. Only in water does the plant gain a healing effect, and Cassius goes there all the time for various reasons. Gestures of goodwill had almost lost their meaning, just as hope had been lost. The young man's ardor did not subside, trying to find out where such information came from. Deciding to stand to the last, the lady remembers her mother, who, according to her, told her about this a long time ago. Once again, pulling her palm away, the guy says that she should better forget about this lake, otherwise there could be bad consequences. The girl seemed reluctant to let go of the boy. The small palm clings again as if begging. Humiliating herself, the main character only continues to ask and insist on her own. It is impossible to give up on what was planned so simply. Cass's patience has clearly run out. Almost shouting, the man orders them to leave him alone and stop testing his already shaky patience. Disappointment and quiet horror slowly mix. The girl did not expect such an attitude towards herself, although she understood perfectly well what she was getting into. The opinion quickly changed, but the Duke refused to carry her back if she suddenly became cold. Euclid was grateful. Out of nowhere, a red-haired person appeared. The maid informs that they brought a cape for the mistress, which will warm her. The cold was creeping under her skin, trying to freeze her insides. Exhaling steam, the beauty realized that she might not have dressed for the weather. A thoughtful look stopped at the interlocutor, asking if it was okay for her to walk like that. It was obvious that she was cold, but she didn't want to admit it. Light slippers with a little insulation look more like flip-flops. Clearly do not help. Urania is wearing completely inappropriate shoes. Lowering her sad eyes, the blonde thinks to herself about shoes. She really tried to find something, but her vision ruined all her plans. Deciding not to dwell on the Duchess's strange behavior, the young man suggests moving on. In her past life, the heroine hid from Cass, trying her best to hide her deception. But this time, everything will be completely different. Barely keeping up with the tall figure, the lady was only thinking about how to establish contact. The first thing was to start a conversation in order to discuss at least something before the divorce. Turning halfway around, the man asks what happened, because for some reason the girl started touching his back. The main character needed to talk at all costs, so she grabbed the Duke's hand. It wasn't that simple. The blue gloves were a big hindrance, preventing me from concentrating and finishing what I started, which was extremely annoying. Without trying to do anything else, the blonde seemed to go quiet, but a second later, Vincent offered to carry her in his arms. He put his fingers to his chin and thought for a moment before saying that it wasn't such a bad idea. The girl found herself in arms that held her tightly. The young gentleman was clearly focused on something else. Snowflakes fall peacefully to the ground, turning into water. Two young people follow a path leading straight to the lake, through a forest of thick trees. The beauty of the surrounding world is one of the best things. Pleasant impressions will remain for a long time. Looking around, the blonde admires nature. The gaze involuntarily switches to the man next to her. She herself asked him to carry her, but now the feeling of guilt did not leave the young heart. Perhaps the man was having a hard time. It is extremely difficult to carry such a weight with one hand, so strange sensations did not leave the Duchess's thoughts. Her face acquired a gloomy color. A wild thought crossed the beauty's mind. Perhaps if she offered him her arms, the young man would find it much easier to carry. The hug attempts failed miserably. It seemed like there was nothing wrong with that, but the guy literally recoiled. The clever eyes stare at Cassius with persistence. The girl seems to be trying to drill a hole with her gaze, not understanding why he is behaving this way. The disdain seeps out. Perhaps it is just suspicion or something else. The Duke says that she communicates with him as if she sees him clearly. The plan almost failed. Confusion swept over the sweet face when the heroine remembered that he did not know about the sight that was returning, and he did not need to know. Silently looking somewhere behind the young man's back, the beauty tried to hush up the incident that had just happened. Awkwardness is one of the strongest feelings that makes you blush. The man, as if nothing had happened, looks into the distance. A strange occupation, if you think about it, but no one is given a choice, so everyone does what they want. The light slippers that graceful feet wear fall to the ground. Enough time has passed, and the couple has managed to reach their destination. A strange thought haunted the young lady. The young man put her down rather gently. There was no hint of anger or disdain for the person in his actions. The silence quickly breaks when Cass asks once again what their purpose in coming here was. Some things remain a mystery. The trick that has already been worked out is the most reliable. The hand, but this time without a glove, carefully touches the cold skin. Words don't want to come out, but deciding to brush it all aside, the lady says the reason. It's because they didn't spend the first night together. Even though the young lady was planning a divorce, she still needed to strengthen her power in the duchy. This would be very helpful in the future. For the plan, everyone must know that the young people are a real couple, so the girl reaches for the guy's hand, asking to save her honor. The mockery sounds in the voice of the interlocutor. He thinks that there is no question of honor. Everyone around always laughs at the lady because she is blind and dumb. The Duke continued to stare at the girl. She didn't like it much, considering everyone knew she was Cassius's thorn in the eye. A smile spreads across her face when Vincent asks again why she needs honor. There is no benefit in it, and there never will be. Trying not to cry, closing her eyes, the girl communicates as usual. She is also a person, so why shouldn't she think about such things? The strange expression on the owner's face does not leave. Perhaps he is simply not pleased with everything that is happening, or perhaps there is something else involved. Turning to his interlocutor, the man asks his question again. He doubts that it is true, but he has no choice. Changing the subject, the guy tells her how surprised he is that her body holds up in such cold. Not a minute passes before Cass, moving away from the beauty, begins to take off his clothes. The heroine barely has time to close her eyes tightly. Her memory was clearly failing her, because the girl even forgot about the fact that the guy comes here to swim, and that is why such things are happening now. Trying not to pay attention, the lady asks him to pull himself together and finally get down to the part of fulfilling the plan. The gaze is directed to the lake. Beautiful, dark surface with sparkling snowflakes. Somewhere here there should be the parakerb, as well as the antidote. You shouldn't pay attention to the person who is already waist-deep in water. The water is probably icy, and that's scary. The young man looks somewhere at his feet. He is looking for something, or is simply lost in thought. It is difficult to read emotions on a face that does not want to give even a single chance. Curling up into a ball, the young lady suddenly thinks seriously, "Isn't he cold? In such weather, it is better to stay at home or at least dress warmly and not climb into the ice hole." A moment later, the man is completely submerged under the water. Any hint of anyone's presence evaporates forever. Several minutes have passed, but the silhouette still does not appear on the horizon. Panic seizes the beauty, and she begins to loudly call Cass. It seemed that no action brought any change. If he heard her, the boy was obliged to emerge. Everything was only getting stranger with each passing minute. The only right decision is a spontaneous action. Hands find stones on the ground and immediately reach for them. After another 5 minutes, the heroine understands that something is clearly wrong. A person cannot be without air for such a long time. Fingers nervously squeeze the cape. I don't want to believe everything that's happening, but it's not clear how it will all end if I don't do anything. Sadness is reflected in every emotion. What needs to be done to finally see dark hair again? And then the Duke himself. Without thinking twice, the girl gets up from the ground and then runs towards the pond. Perhaps later this will not be the best decision, but now it seems that everything is not so important. The head, like the rest of the body, slowly sinks into the cold water. The limbs do not want to obey because of the sudden change in temperature. One memory comes to mind. A person not gifted with magic dies immediately. At the age of 10, the heroine managed to attend a funeral, and it was then that she met Cassius, a little boy who didn't know anything yet. As it turned out, his father, the previous Duke Euclid, died in the war, in battle. One of the saddest news for the kingdom. It was clear to everyone present that the son was in terrible pain, but he held on until the very end. The little boy didn't utter a word, standing in proud solitude. Even as a child, the girl was already sad about this. She didn't want to believe that it would all end so easily. The Duchess mentally begged her friend to hold on and wait until he was rescued. The last of her strength was leaving her young body. The lake did not want to let her go, pulling her further and further into the abyss and hoping to capture everything around. The girl slowly sinks to the bottom. It seems that just a little bit more and there will be absolutely nothing good left in everything that is happening. Someone's hand suddenly grabs the wrist. The Duke notices the drowning person in time and, deciding not to waste a minute, saves her. The face looks worried as the young man tries to swim higher and higher towards the shore, hoping for a successful outcome. The sun is shining through the beautiful panoramic windows of the palace. It is already morning, or most likely noon, even if it is not known exactly how much time has passed. The dream is interrupted by a rag, which again ends up on her face. A female voice angrily notes that the heroine has finally woken up. Turning her head towards Talia, she had to listen to her displeasure. She knew something would happen, and she didn't understand why she had to jump into the water for no reason. Standing up abruptly, the girl remembers what happened last night. She jumped in to save Cassius, and now she had no idea what condition he was in. The maid interrupts her thoughts, continuing her story about how the master jumped into the water to get the wayward woman. Soaking wet, he still managed to carry her to the castle. Just the mention of the man made my insides clench. How was it that he managed to remain completely unharmed, trying to pretend that his sight had never returned, clutching at the sheets, his thoughts still running in different directions? It's good that he's okay. A strange impulse came to mind. Swinging her hand, the girl abruptly throws the rag away from her face. The maid's scream can be heard anywhere, especially at such a volume. Speaking about the person going crazy, Talia reminds her that she slept for 2 whole days. She shouldn't act so disrespectfully after everything that happened. Horror fills the mind. The main character knew that a certain amount of time had passed, but she did not suspect about 2 days. Putting her hand to her head, the beauty realizes that she is burning. The heat was a possible consequence of diving into the lake. Luckily, it didn't end that badly, as she survived. Turning her head, the girl notices a glass with a potion. This stuff can be identified by its smell even from a kilometer away. The disgust at everything that is happening is very real. Count Vincent tried again and sent this potion so that her sight and voice would never be restored. Without thinking twice, Urena quickly turns away, realizing that if this is not avoided, all her treatment progress will go in the wrong direction. This cannot be allowed. Tenacious fingers grab her chin, trying to pour the liquid into her mouth. Talia is outraged by the lady's behavior, not understanding what came over her today. The poison flows down her lips, never getting into her mouth in the right way and in the right amount. The heroine makes incomprehensible moans, trying to resist. The glass falls to the floor and breaks on the tiles with a characteristic noise, while the maid is already indignant with anger. Putting her hand to her face, the girl tries to understand whether she has drunk too much and how this will affect her condition in the future. Strange feelings prevail. There's no way she can drink that stuff again. The antidote is the key, and if she keeps this up, she'll end up on the slippery slope again. The door slowly opens and Cassius's figure appears in the room. The screams were so loud that even the Duke came to check what had happened. The maid stands silently, head bowed, while the young man continues to ask what happened. Confusion seeps into the master's voice. Talia began to justify herself, saying what a wretch the lady was for not wanting to take the medicine. Cass's eyes looked away, focused. Realizing that the gaze has been turned to her, the beauty only silently looks back, not daring to utter a word. Worries are still swirling in her head. A moment later, a tone full of anger ordered the maid to get out of here. Words of objection did not help much because the man remains unmoved. Closing her eyes, Talia, realizing that arguing is useless, decides that it might be best to leave. The consequences could be irreversible. The door slams shut. The person who just disappeared clearly wanted everyone present to see her character one last time. The young man is at the bedside in no time, and then bends over the girl. The moment expresses the weakness of the young couple. Cassius looks at his interlocutor's face with concentration, while the beauty realizes that her vision has been restored even more. Now it is possible to better see the guy's facial features. You want to literally dive into it, trying to understand its entire essence. Perhaps this is not the best idea, but sometimes desires become more important than anything else. A beautiful mirror showed the reflection of a young couple. Quite unexpectedly, the man suddenly asks why the lady jumped into that pond. There is no answer. The girl just silently looks somewhere at her bed, trying to avoid the interrogation that has already begun. The hand convulsively squeezes the sheet. It is very difficult to become what you are not yet and to reveal your secrets. The man's palm gently touches the opposite. Moving closer to the young lady's body, the young man demands an answer. He insists that he be told the truth, and that all of this will finally stop. The girl carefully takes his hand, trying to refuse as gently as possible. It is not worth ruining the relationship, but the answer does not come by itself. The quiet voice says that the girl is glad that Cassius is okay. She started all this only to save him, and that was important. Realization comes quickly enough. Lavender eyes look through the furniture as the Duke realizes that his wife has dived after him. Sadness is etched on the lady's face as she gently shakes her head, as if in agreement. There's no point in hiding it now. The sudden change in emotions is frightening. An indignant voice screams, saying that the person should have known that diving there without magic is dangerous. The anger evaporates somewhere. A calm tone asks not to do it again so that nothing bad happens. According to Vincent, even this time was enough for him. I didn't want to admit it, but it was obvious. The young man was angry at the beauty. The motives were hard to understand, but even so, everything was clear. The best solution would be to simply apologize. The hand gently reaches for the dark suit the guy is wearing. The young man did not expect such a turn of events, and in order not to fall, he has to take measures. His hand tenaciously grabs the headboard of the bed. The silent question freezes on Cassius's lips as the couple continues to stare into each other's eyes. Something is bound to happen. Tenacious fingers grab hold of her husband's shoulder. The girl follows her plan, trying to do everything in the best possible way for her. A second later, something happens that was definitely not expected. With her hands clasped together, the blonde hugs the man standing next to her, trying to prove her gratitude. The next words are nothing more than sorry. She is truly sorry that this happened. She did not want to do this, but accidentally forgot about the properties of the pond. Trying to break away from the lady, the guy asks in surprise what just happened. He shouldn't have taken advantage of the moment so brazenly. Urania looks at her interlocutor quietly and intently. She cannot explain her momentary impulse and her actions in general. The guy exhales in disappointment and asks how she can behave like that. It's not proper, and even if she's allowed to, it doesn't mean anything. The girl is about to get up in order to try to take at least some action. A strange thought comes to mind about the blanket she is wrapped in. Why does she need it? The realization came rather quickly. All this time, Urania had been dressed inappropriately. A light nightgown, which was not suitable for meeting guests. The colors of shame filled the cheeks of the main character. She did not want to admit it, but she really did wrong when she did not check what she was dressed in. The only correct solution came to mind rather quickly. Grabbing the blanket, the girl wraps herself tightly in it. The bell for calling the staff, which had been peacefully lying on the nightstand all this time, ends up in the hands of the Duke. The ringing resounds throughout the chambers. A moment later, Talia appears in the room. With her arms folded, the person asks what happened and why she was called. The man asks about the treatment of his betrothed, mentioning the fact that the blonde could have swallowed parak grass in the lake. In that case, it is worth taking the white grass. The realization comes as if from nowhere. The white grass is the yang grass that has been so persistently sought for use as an antidote. The master asks to bring the medicine when ready, but not to force her to take it anymore. The maid agrees, while something inside Urania rejoices. The stern tone returns to its rightful place. The last warning and only one. If the maid dares to humiliate the wife, then the master too. The strange behavior does not give rest. The man could not change so quickly and turn from a cold heart to a kind one. The blonde is overcome with confusion. Has Cassius really taken the side of his betrothed? And is this all true? Words thrown out a few days ago float into my head. The girl asked to preserve her honor and leave at least a drop. It was hard to believe that the young man had somehow listened to the young lady's words. Everything seemed false, but there was no choice. It was worth believing for his own good. Not even a few hours had passed when the dark-haired maid stood before her mistress, asking about her wishes. Perhaps it was worth calling another maid. Bowing her head in agreement, the blonde waited for her task to be completed immediately. It was extremely important. Understanding what they want from her, the girl says that everything will be done. She wants to help the mistress at any cost. The door slams shut. Lena is really very kind and always takes care of Urania, understanding her situation. Even Talia's intrigues are no obstacle in this matter. The memories were not the best. In her past life, this girl helped her even after everyone turned away from her. When the heroine was locked in the tower, no one wanted to communicate with her or even bring her food. But Lena always tried to do everything in the best possible way. The beauty was almost overcome by melancholy at that time. Sitting exhausted, she really lacked support. Thoughts are interrupted as soon as two maids appear in the room. The promise is fulfilled, and in record time. A slight smile appears on the lady's face. Opilia will be very useful for the escape plan from here. Allies are not a bad thing. And this girl is the Baron's wife, who was deprived of her status. She was originally Euclid's personal maid, so an alliance with her is very beneficial. The maid can easily replace Talia, and it will be quite simple to do. There will be no one in the way who could interfere. Remembering the letter that needs to be sent, Urania turns the conversation to a completely different topic. Addressing her interlocutor, she mentions the loss of Opilia's child. A surprised voice asks how this is known. There is no answer, since Lena told about it long ago in the tower after everything happened. Taking the paper from the table, the girl continues the conversation again, promising that she will help find the child. This will be the best payment. Mercy is one of the most important things in this world. The Duchess continues the story because after helping, she will allow them both to live in the estate, but she needs something in return. Tears of joy freeze in green eyes. Asking again, the girl does not believe that this is possible. And then thanks. The conditions are very simple. You need to watch Talia, and as soon as she does something strange, immediately report it. This will be the payment for all the work. The beauty is still the legal wife of Duke Euclid, and while this is still true, she intends to take full advantage of it. A carrier pigeon flies between the clouds. A letter is tied to its leg, which is probably intended for someone specific. Sitting on the windowsill on the other side of the window, the bird lightly taps its beak on the glass, announcing its arrival. Approaching the windowsill, the girl understands that this day has come. The letter that destroyed her entire life has arrived, and now she just needs to do everything right. The Count mentioned that because of what he ordered Cass to stay at the festival in the capital. The time has come, so it is worth destroying the protective artifact. Thoughts gallop through the young lady's head. Better to become the Duke's shadow than sign her own death warrant. The hand is shaking, but there is enough strength to write that the girl refuses to do this. The paper is folded again and tied with a ribbon. The hands are slowly raised into the air, and then the carrier bird is released. The deed is done exactly as required. The girl's face flushed with pride. She had managed to defy Count Vincent for the first time in 20 years. Something out of the realm of fantasy. Rejoicing in her small victory, Urena decides that it is better to die in battle than to become a puppet. Nothing can be changed now. The thought of a poisonous potion that they give her comes to mind. Thanks to the herb that they gave her, her vision and voice returned completely. You won't be able to cheat for long, so you should get well soon. Then get a divorce and run away as far as possible. The best solution. No one knows what the consequences will be if Cassius finds out about the little secret that has been kept hidden all this time. His anger may be uncontrollable. Horror came from nowhere. The heroine didn't even want to think about something like that. It was better to forget about such things. It's a dark night, and only one bright lamp shines reliably, helping those present to complete what they started and not be in the dark. The blonde sits all alone in the room, trying to figure out the letter. A blank sheet of paper lies on the table, waiting for some action. The pen glides easily over the parchment, as if trying to make the letters more beautiful than they should be. A second later, the heavy seal descends, confirming the validity of the order. It is strange that everything is happening exactly as it should not. The thought of Opilia comes to mind. She will definitely be able to find a good and worthy doctor who could help. The Duchess continues to sit in her chair while calling for her maid. Not a minute passes before the woman materializes, asking what she needs. The request is rather strange, and the maid's face twists a little. She needs to send the letter in secret. The addressee is Said Callisto, an unfamiliar man, but one I would still like to get to know better. I wonder what this man's motive is. A middle-aged young man in strange clothes asks what is written on this paper that is so important. His gaze shows clear interest. A man with long, beautiful blue hair raises his hand with a piece of paper in the air. He hums with interest without holding back. The answer is not long in coming. Not even an hour has passed, and the letter lies on the windowsill, stating that anyone for a lot of money. A slight anger is reflected on the young lady's face. She complains to herself about Said's character. He is, as always, inimitable. She was pulled out of her thoughts by someone's voice, calling her mistress. Perhaps someone urgently needed something, and she needed to understand what exactly. Lena, approaching the box, says that they have good news. Miss Opilia has been reunited with her child and has conveyed that the request has been fulfilled in the best possible way. The waist is no longer a problem, and that's for the best. In her mind, the girl notes that her voice is still not very good, but her vision is fully restored, which means that soon she can raise the topic of divorce. The beautiful corridor literally swallowed the girl. In this life, Cass did not go to the capital, and perhaps it was because of the lake. But no one knew. The maid, carefully holding the beauty's hand, led her along the corridors. This life will pass in a new way, the way it needs. Approaching the main hall, the blonde notices two people. The servants greet the mistress and then bow obsequiously. The question of how she is doing makes her freeze. Strange sensations make her whole body literally soar. Confusion is reflected on her face in a slight note. There is no one behind Urena, which means they are talking to her, which can't help but throw her into a stupor. It's strange what happened to them all of a sudden. Thoughts are jumping in different directions while Lena gently nudges her friend. Everything that is happening quickly becomes clear. The Duke has called everyone and ordered them to treat the young lady with respect. Realization comes in the same second. The maid goes off into her pink dreams, talking about how cool Cassius looked when he pulled the Duchess out of the lake. The lady refuses to shut up, continuing to talk about the moment when the man came to the castle holding his wife in his arms. Switching to something else, the girl nevertheless turns to the person standing next to her, asking if she is scared. The only answer is an awkward smile. Realizing how much she has been talking, the maid suddenly falls silent and then asks for forgiveness, as if trying to make amends for something. A male voice calls out to Urenius, calling her name. Everything happens rather quickly, but the girl manages to turn around. Cassius looks menacingly at his interlocutor. He did not allow her to leave until she was completely recovered. The guy crosses his arms belligerently and demands that she explain herself. It's really quite strange, but he seems angry. A slight smile of resignation appears on his face. Perhaps Lena has simply mixed something up because the Duke she knows certainly does not act worried. She even managed to believe in such a miracle, but everything quickly dissipated. Her fingers tightly clutch a piece of paper. The beauty looks away in embarrassment and hands over the note. She is ashamed of her actions, but this cannot wait for at least a few more days. Vincent's hand carefully takes the offered thing. He can't wait to find out what is written there. The cold-bloodedness is sometimes very surprising, because not a single muscle of the face even moved. The gaze runs over the clumsy handwriting. The eyes widen in surprise, letting me know at least some emotion. It is nothing more than a strange confusion. The voice seemed to be almost shaking, but pulling himself together, the guy asked again if they really wanted to divorce him. The brows furrow as the young man asks questions in surprise. He wonders what happened that made her act like that. Fear tries to creep in, but there is no way out. So, bowing her head, the Duchess tries not to show that something is wrong here. Without giving her a chance to explain anything, even using her methods, the man turns on his heels and then asks her to follow him. Joy is all. In her mind, the girl is already rejoicing. Perhaps Cass wants to sign the papers right away, and then everything will be over. Trying to show with gestures what they need to do, Urania says that they should follow the Duke. Slight confusion is strongly expressed on the face of the beauty, but the maid does not dare to contradict. Stairs and corridors are all that can be seen at the moment. The path is not the shortest, and the estate, on the contrary, is too huge. The dark-haired young man is almost at the right door. Only he knows why they all came here. The blonde tries to walk as fast as she can. She can't wait to sort this marriage out once and for all. The legs, shod in beautiful blue shoes, literally tangle, clinging to each other. Quite comfortable shoes, but not the best combination with speed. Lena is visibly nervous. She tries to hold the Duchess tightly to prevent her from falling, but she is not very good at it, so she asks to slow down a little. Turning her head, the brunette asks the owner to go slower because the girl can't quite keep up with him. The patent leather shoes freeze. The man decided to listen to the advice and apparently decided to stop and wait. Anger takes over his entire body again. He is outraged that the girl, not fully recovered, is walking around and even offers a divorce. Irina really doesn't want this, but this is the only way she will have at least some chance at the full life she has dreamed of for so long. Grabbing the hem of her dress with her hand and then squeezing it, the girl remains silent. She has no other choice, even if her voice has returned. Trying to soften the situation, the blonde smiles. There is no point in making your situation worse. Otherwise, there will definitely be no point. The pupils, as if by themselves, become smaller. The man clearly does not know how to react to such an attitude towards himself. The smile widens. A mischievous thought flashes through his mind. Perhaps it's worth trying again. One of the effective methods that has already been tried. The guy's cheekbones tense up. He still has absolutely no idea what's going on and what he should expect as the next step. The Duke's lips froze in a silent question. Perhaps he really should have asked something, but there was absolutely no time for that, so he should keep his mouth shut. The girl's face turns bright red. She didn't even have time to do anything, but something already made her feel embarrassed. How awkward. The voice addresses the interlocutor. She again tries to confuse the young man, leaving him no chance to escape. The cold gaze is focused on something superficial. The girl is again doing some incomprehensible actions, thereby ruining everything. Shaking her head, the blonde tries to explain something. She is already tired of all this, but she has no other plan. If someone manages to interfere, then the whole plan with the divorce will go down the drain. It may all be a lie, but Cassius doesn't look happy about the news of his wife's intentions. A few seconds later, a warm male hand gently takes Euclid's palm. All thoughts immediately evaporate somewhere, not giving a single chance to rethink. The Duke grabs the brush and throws it over his shoulder. He clearly has a clear plan on how to turn everything to his advantage. Surprised, Urania finds herself in the arms of the brunette. She can't help but be confused by everything that's happening, but the questions only increase. The girl doesn't want to let go of the guy's neck at all. Perhaps she's just afraid that he won't hold her and she'll fall. Or there's something else going on. Cassius, without looking up, starts talking about something else. The heroine hugged him so confidently, and now she is literally shaking from fear. The next words are addressed to none other than Lena. She is asked to leave the young people alone. The maid's eyes immediately widen, but she does not dare to object. Bowing her head in a gesture of submission, the brunette decides to leave. She doesn't want to disturb such a moment between the couple and break orders. A beautiful room, lit only by daylight, beautifully furnished in the style of a duke. It is immediately clear to whom the estate belongs. The heroine sits on the sofa looking at the teapot, into which tea is poured, in order to then pour the whole thing into cups. It is strange that Cass went for it. Dark liquid falls into the mug as the man begins his tirade. She imagines it, or he admits his cold attitude towards her. The girl raises her head as the man approaches the sofa. He asks her to understand him because this happens and it is natural. The man lowers himself very close, continuing his simple speech. The blonde really did avoid him almost all the time, and he couldn't do anything about it. The situation is very difficult to change, but it is still worth trying. Moving as far away as possible, the Duchess cursed the brunette and his desire to get closer. Unexpected words poured out of her mouth. The interlocutor had changed a lot lately, but was that really all she needed? His hands don't even dare touch the mug filled to the brim, remaining limply lying at his sides. It's hard to believe that everything he says is true. Asking again if she really needs a divorce, the young man takes the girl by the hand. The sensations are one of the most unpleasant and at the same time exciting. As if remembering something, the man says that after mentioning the divorce, the girl became literally fearless. Her behavior worsened. It seemed that Cassius was a big tiger and Aurelia was a small, defenseless rabbit. It was necessary to remain calm, but it was quite difficult to do so. It seems that the statement of her desire really hurt the guy. The girl did not expect such a turn of events, but there was no need to expect anything supernatural. Sharply spitting out the contents of the cup, the heroine jumped back from the table. Her tongue was burning very badly. The tea was too hot and she had clearly miscalculated it. Putting her hand to her mouth as if trying to smooth away all the pain, the beauty does not show it. She really wants to scream, but there is no way out. She pretends to be mute. Out of nowhere, the Duke appears with a napkin in his hands, which he intends to apply to the girl's cheek or mouth. Is this care? Carefully continuing his actions, the brunette asks if the interlocutor got burned. He needs to know what happened and how to help her. He gently runs the cloth over his chin, still looking at the burn with care. His eyes widen, and the main character just continues to stare. The focused gaze of intelligent eyes tries to drill a hole, even if all attempts remain only temporary. The hands seem to reach forward on their own and then push the young man quite hard in the chest. In attempts to push away, nothing else matters. Surprise and even some disappointment prevail. You don't want to believe that this is really happening, but the guy clearly didn't expect such a turn of events. Putting her finger to her lips, the heroine wonders how it just happened. She didn't even want to push him. It just happened somehow. The tongue, which still burned mercilessly, was torn from her thoughts. Irina had indeed been burned, and there was no point in denying it anymore. The Duke suddenly decides to state the facts out loud. The beauty doesn't like to complain, constantly asks to hug her, and after all this, she jumps into the lake. It's hard to understand the motives. The hand buries itself in the hair. It is almost impossible to understand the girl, but strangely enough, it is still given. The chosen ones could do it even without great effort. You don't want to admit your mistakes or justify your actions, especially since it's much harder to do when you're mute. The blonde doesn't even dare to say anything. The hand reaches for the handle of some incomprehensible drawer. The man clearly has his own plan, so he urgently needed something in the table. A beautiful blue velvet box falls into the girl's palms. It turns out that this is the family treasure of the Euclid family. It would seem such a calm shell, but inside the heroine, everything was raging. She hoped for a divorce and therefore was indignant because of the strange behavior of the guy. The blonde clearly wants to say something, perhaps to express her deep dissatisfaction, or perhaps there is something else involved. The aggressive expression on her face makes itself known. She needs to win the Duke's hand and thereby explain to him some important things that are worth knowing. Things are not always as simple as they seem. Instead of following the request, the young man just turns around and leaves, heading in a completely different direction. It is not clear what prompted this behavior. Shock shows on his confused face. How dare he do this right in front of a lady? This is unacceptable. Already at the door, the brunette turns around, asking the lady to treat the Duchess's duty responsibly. The reward will be that Euclid will also live up to her expectations. The door slams shut, and then a deep breath was heard from the blonde. Things were clearly not going to be as easy as she would like. Attention is again drawn to a small box, peacefully lying on an oak table very close to the sofa. Her hands reach out to the thing on their own. It already seems that the body is not subject to the heroin, but this is not so because she can still think about how not to do this. The eyes widen even more, becoming like apples. It is hard to believe that what the girl is holding in her hands is so valuable. This beautiful necklace is a symbol of the duchy. The colors go well together, showing how rich and luxurious everything is. The realization comes at the same moment, dispelling all the joy from the received thing. If Cassius gives such a thing, then divorce can be completely forgotten. Nowadays, divorces and short marriages are not uncommon. There is something useful to be learned from this information. The man certainly does not care about his reputation, which means that the reason lies somewhere else. The girl couldn't believe it at all. But did Euclid still blame himself for the girl losing her sight and head when she was saving his mother? Many unsolved secrets remain sealed for centuries. Her gaze shifts back to the velvet box. It is unclear what she should do with it. She does not intend to wear the necklace, but the Duke has given other orders. A mischievous thought flashes through the back of my mind. If I sell this thing, I could make so much money that I would never have to work again, which couldn't help but make me happy. The opinion changed very quickly. Putting the pendant back in its rightful place, the girl thinks only that she cannot act in such a way. Pushing the belonging away from herself, she silently reflects. Life is still much more precious to her than any sale. For this to work, Cass's guilt must first be assuaged. After all that has happened, it may do him some good. Not much time has passed, but the morning has come quite unnoticed. A female voice tries to call the Duke, but all is in vain. One of the maids tries to clarify the situation. No one has seen the owner since yesterday. Even the people who always surround him say they have no idea what happened. Like a sad little dog, Urania, looking down, is about to leave. Lena quickly realizes that this can't be so she changes her train of thought. The advisor must know where Cassius is now. The girl's spirits were revived because now she just needed to find him. An hour later, all attempts had failed. Burying her face in her palms, the heroine complained that she couldn't even find the servant she needed. If the young people do not meet, they will not be able to talk. The man simply disappeared, but sitting with folded hands is not a good option either. The yang herb helped restore vision and almost completely the voice, so it was time to act. Out of nowhere, Gale appears, asking if he was called. This was indeed true, because Urena had been looking for him for a long time. The girl folds her hands on her knees and looks into the distance. She knows exactly what she has to do to complete the job successfully. Her fingers pick up the note and then, as if weightlessly, slide it across the table toward the servant. She needs to be heard. The order was for the boy to prepare for departure. Better to do it today, otherwise he might miss an important event. Determination fills the mind. Vincent is not there, which means the lady will have to go in search of a cure alone. It is worth it and will definitely bear fruit in the future. Smiling obligingly, the young man accepts the note and then says that as soon as he notifies the owner, they should set out. Trying to react as calmly as possible, the girl understands that everything can be destroyed. Cassius must not know about this under any circumstances, otherwise something will go wrong. The blonde looks menacingly at Guile, and then points her finger at the piece of paper. He must turn the note over. The text said that the mistress knew what the servant did in the morning. The man's eyes slowly widened, realizing the complexity of the situation. Embarrassment covers the young man's cheeks with a bright scarlet color. He tries to say something, objecting, but there is no point in continuing to build the performance. Covering his face, he asks again how she knows about this information. It is absolutely impossible to believe that all this is real. The shame literally makes you want to fall into the ground. This secret was not complicated and was known to a fairly wide circle of people. Every morning, Gale sits down to write erotic stories. The guy's favorite genre is male love. Not the best choice if you do something secretly. There is always a chance that someone will find out. And that is exactly what happened now. The girl didn't want to admit it, but she herself only recently found out about it. A messenger pigeon had flown into the window of the chambers by accident, causing surprise. This duchy is quite progressive, so no one has the right to judge someone's hobbies. However, servants are forbidden to do anything other than serve. Smiling, the girl asks to do each other a favor and keep quiet about this little incident. Now it will be quite simple because it will be possible to control Guile. Trying not to cry from shame and hide his nervousness, the servant bows, saying that he will begin preparations right away. A beautiful gilded carriage rushes through the streets like a whirlwind. The people in it are in a hurry, and this can be understood by the speed. Already on the street, the blonde, beautifully dressed in a cute suit, heads towards the next street. The man behind her helpfully follows her. The alley looks abandoned because of the dilapidated houses. The guy says that they have arrived, while the lady herself tries to understand where they are. Two young men are standing near the entrance to some barracks, completely out of place in the local interior. Everything around looks more than strange. The blonde says that they are staying in the wrong place. He is absolutely calm because they have just a little more to go and they will find themselves in the house they need. Without even trying to use gestures to say or write anything, the girl silently raises her hand, stopping the flow of words. The only thing that can be understood from her gestures is that she wants to say no. Why not, if the best way was to move on? The one they were looking for is already here. A young man with long bluish hair waves his hand invitingly, as if inviting them to come inside. This man is Callisto Saide, the leader of the mercenaries. He puts his hand to his chin, as if mockingly surprised by the appearance of Duchess Euclid herself. The girl feels a little sad. This man is an old childhood friend, but he died even before her. This cannot help but worry her, even if it happened in a past life. After the artifact was destroyed, monsters crawled through the breach, and so the Empire wanted to use mercenaries. This seemed like the best solution at the time. The guild raised their prices exorbitantly to make even more money, and some say Callisto was responsible for that decision. Cassius killed him. Coming closer, the guy, like an older brother, puts his hand to the heroine's forehead, jokingly recalling the promise. She is not his wife, as she promised in childhood, but someone else's. Patience is like an overflowing cup, bursting at the seams. The girl with a murderous look looks menacingly upwards. Her desire is very simple, because she needs to be left alone. Angry at the man, the young lady waves her arms, trying to remain as calm as possible. Laughter flows throughout the room. As she prepares to work, Callisto calms down and asks if anything strange has happened lately that could be a mistake. The lady's eyebrows rise in surprise. She is trying to express her thoughts in this way, because it is difficult to understand what should have happened. Slowly leaning towards the ear of his interlocutor, Sade reminds her of her father, who is quite the specimen. The Count is constantly trying to ruin everyone's life. The girl hits the boy in the chest with her small fist. It's all a joke, of course, but anger already seems irreplaceable. No longer trying to hide behind notes, the lady asks to tell her in more detail, because it is really important for her to know what insidious plans her relative has. Raising his head and joking again, the man smiles, talking about how he missed his girlfriend's nasal voice. Tears of happiness are very difficult to hold back. Leaning closer to the lady's face, the guy tries to continue his sarcastic speech, while Gale tries his best to remain calm. The tired look makes it clear how difficult it is. He asks if his friends would like to choose another place for all this fun, even if an answer is not forthcoming. The girl viciously grabs Sade by the hair, trying to teach him some sense. The childhood friend tries to resist Rennie's pressure, begging her to let him go. The boy's reserves of sarcasm are clearly exhausted, and so he asks for it all to end, and in return he will, of course, tell everything. It is not at all difficult for him to do such a favor. Pulling her hands out of the man's hair, the girl is happy that it will finally happen. It hasn't even been 100 years since it happened. It's pretty tiring, isn't it? Someone's rough voice, as if tearing you out of reality, says that Urania treated her friend too softly, even if it was not true and everything happened as a joke. A black-gloved hand grabs the back of Sade's head. Anger seeps out, trying to fill everything around him, as if it doesn't care about anything. The Duke stands there, as if nothing had happened, still holding the man. He does not intend to do anything, but most likely expects to hear something, like an explanation. Horror is reflected on the heroine's face. She did not expect to see Cassius here, especially since she was sure of the secrecy of her operation. Something went completely wrong. Turning his head, Callisto, as if he was not afraid of anything, smiles his most disgusting smile. Realizing that Euclid himself is standing in front of him, he still continues to sneer. The boy frowned and asked what business the mercenary captain was discussing with his duchess. Perhaps he was genuinely interested, or perhaps there was some other hidden reason. Putting her hands to her face, the blonde only now realizes what is brewing here. The current situation needs to be urgently corrected somehow. The girl approaches her husband with slow steps. She probably already knows how to try to make amends for everything that happened. She can't hesitate for a second. Like a kitten, she looks into the eyes, trying to make the Duke let the man go. He is probably in pain, and nothing good will come of this. The outcome is inordinately important. Confusion flashes across Cass's face. He didn't think his wife would defend some obscure man with whom he was clearly not on good terms. The guy clearly didn't want to understand the situation. Turning his head to the side, the man continues to look away silently. He can't believe that the whole situation will end so easily. Suddenly, the Duchess realizes what is happening. It is unclear how he got here, because it is almost impossible to get into this part of the guild even intentionally. Someone clearly had a hand in it. I can't believe it, but it was really Gale who gave her plans to the master. He looks rather strange, but at the same time, he is terribly calm. It was definitely a servant. Realizing that the girl can't say anything, she just silently glares at the butler. She wants to literally hit him, but in the presence of others, it's impossible. Cass's eyes seem to shrink even more. He was considering what to do and whether he should really try to let go and forget about Saide. By lowering his hand, the man nevertheless gives Callisto the opportunity to free herself from the iron grip. His wife's persuasion clearly worked. The guy's head drops down a bit, as does his body, as the sharp kick literally sends him flying. Not the best landing. The sarcasm returns to normal. Saide humorously complains about the pain. The next words are that he wants compensation for the damage caused. The icy look quickly made the interlocutor regret his words. Throwing up his hands, the young man just waves his hand, saying that he was joking. It is an honor for the young man to speak to the Duke. The first words that come out of his mouth indicate that he and Rennie are childhood friends. This is completely unnecessary information. Squinting, Uranius can't understand why he needs to be sarcastic again. How can he talk so frivolously to the demon of war? In general, the guy has always been like this. Give him your hand, he'll bite it off at the elbow. He doesn't care how rich or strong a person is because he always behaves the same. Clinging to the Duke's elbow, the heroine understands that now is the time to leave. The young man will soon explode from anger, and then everything could end badly. Cass turns his attention to his wife. He doesn't need words to understand what is required of him. Perhaps the best solution is to simply obey and leave. A nervous smile as if to reassure that everything was fine, and they should not be left alone with Saide. No one knows what might come into his head. Cassius seemed to ignore everything. He was lost in thought, and then, as if in nirvana, he asked again if they were really friends. According to Callisto, he was simply too happy to see them, so he overdid it. They really are old friends. Anger takes over the Duke's emotions again. Frowning, he asks to call the girl Duchess, not Renee. She has a name, but not this horrible abbreviation. The interlocutor asks for forgiveness, but it is clear to everyone present that this is all a lie. Nothing can be done about it, because they have known each other for so long that one wants to use nicknames. The humor was not appreciated. Euclid was ready to incinerate the dark-haired youth without even thinking for a second. Urania was already pretty fed up with this, despite the fact that they were both dear to her. If Cass isn't going to just leave, then we're going to have to take action. It's pretty scary what could happen if he's not taken away from here right now. Anger takes over Urina's mind again. She doesn't want to do anything, but she has no choice. If the man doesn't stop now, she'll have to persuade him. Said, as if nothing had happened, continues to have fun, waving his arms for fun. It is not obvious, but everything that is happening gives him great pleasure. Raising her fingers in the air, the heroine decides to send him far away. The gestures indicate that he should leave here while he is allowed. Otherwise, everything will only get worse. Callisto doesn't really want to take risks, since the beauty was a real pain in the ass as a child. She always tried to do something nasty, and all the goodies went to her friend. Putting his hand to his face, as if saluting as a sign of his departure, the young man speaks of some unfinished business of his that cannot wait. This means that the persuasion has worked. The young couple remains in absolute silence. The girl's face expresses the greatest relief, while the young man has not yet completely calmed down. Without thinking twice, the Duke turns towards his interlocutor and then suggests leaving here. There is nothing to catch here, which means there is no point in staying. Smiling sweetly, the girl just continues to silently look at her husband. She has nothing to say even with gestures, and she doesn't want to spoil such a moment with anything. The man doesn't understand what's going on. Changing the subject, he asks why she's so happy. At first glance, it might seem like she's happy that Cass found her. The best solution would be to always show kindness and care towards her husband. The heroine had long ago decided that this would help, and so she carefully takes the palm again. Looking down somewhere, the girl starts drawing letters, trying to ask something. She's very interested in how he found her here. Wincing sharply, Euclid says that he needs to know everything his wife does. It is not his own desire, but if Urena continues to hide anything, he will not be able to stay on her side. The realization knocks her off her feet in a strong wave. She herself offered the man a divorce, and now he wants to help her and stay on her side. Isn't that strange? However, the guy remains rooted to the spot, not allowing himself to move even an inch. He is genuinely interested in what the Duchess's next words will be. Continuing to run her finger over her palm, the girl asks if she can go for walks sometimes. Perhaps this is an important thing, or perhaps it is something secondary. Bowing his head, the young man seemed to hesitate and could not make a precise decision. This could not be untrue, because the answer was already written on his forehead. Opening her mouth in surprise, the beauty tries to understand whether she is dreaming everything that is happening. Her eyes widen, but it is worth it, because she is allowed to go for a walk. Without saying another word, Cassius just continues to look at his interlocutor, as if looking into her soul. He understands her hidden joy, but he can do nothing about it. The blonde realizes that she is not behaving very appropriately. She is ashamed to talk to him, but it should not be like this. Somewhere there is a way to fix this. The girl's hand was about to slip away, but the tenacious grip prevents her from doing so. It's hard to believe that the man enjoys standing next to her. The main character's face turns red. It's hard for her to understand the motives, but there's no denying how enjoyable this activity is. Proudly looking off into the distance, the Duke stands there, not letting go of his wife, realizing that they should move on. His face does not express any of the raging emotions inside his body. The beautiful chariot is racing through the streets at a furious pace again. No one is in a hurry, but everyone wants to leave this part of the guild as quickly as possible. Gloved fingers gently touch the neck and then fasten the clasp of the pendant. It is immediately clear that the gift should be in its rightful place. While adjusting her hair, the beauty tries to adjust the necklace as carefully as possible, without damaging anything. The Duke is pleased with his well-done work. The girl's eyes fall on the pendant. She still can't believe that she managed to agree to this without even resisting. There is a beautiful silver whistle lying on the palm of your hand. Nothing special, but at the same time it is made quite well and solidly. She wonders what such generosity consists of. This is already the second decoration in recent times. There is something important hidden here, and it is yet to be discovered. Memories take me back to a few days ago, when the blonde was sitting on the bed and still looking at the pendant. A strange coincidence. Carefully holding the whistle to her face, she wondered what she could do with it or how she could test it. The test should go perfectly. Putting the thing to her lips, the heroine understood that she definitely had enough strength to accomplish what she had planned. She just had to take a deep breath, and then she could whistle. The carriage with the driver is still on the road. Having slowed down, the speed is almost minimal, realizing that there is nowhere else to hurry because the couple has left the city. The hand grasps the edge of the sleeve of a beautiful ornamented garment. This gesture is ambiguous, but it is immediately clear what the owner wants. Continuing to pull persistently, the girl seems to be trying to convey her desires. Both people in the carriage do not express any visible emotions, only complete indifference. The Duke finally understands what is wanted from him. It was not difficult, but it took time. Asking again, he clarifies whether the girl really wants the young man to take off his jacket. The blonde tries to mumble something without gestures, but since everyone knows that her voice has not returned, only indistinct sounds come out. This was to be expected. The man seems deeply impressed. He doesn't expect anything from this meeting, but also something interesting has already happened and is still going on. The girl simply continues to stare blankly at her interlocutor, realizing that she has exhausted her supply of courage, and now she just needs to wait for the next step. It's all quite simple. Accepting the challenge, the husband, taking his jacket off his shoulders, despite the fact that it hurts and at the same time talks about some incomprehensible things. He would like them to always have such an opportunity to communicate well. Slightly raised by the hands of the shirt, he bares his elbow and shows the wound on his hand. The eyes of the interlocutor widen and understanding overtakes in a split second. Taking out a snow-white treated cloth, she gently begins to apply it to the painful area. It is important to her that Cass feels better, and that he can finally feel better. Misunderstanding is reflected on the rough features of the face. The next question remains hanging in the air because the young man is interested in how the blonde found out about this. The girl finds it difficult to say anything. Sadness is displayed, capturing everything around, even if it is not necessary. This is what is happening now because the heroine is preparing for a speech. After her vision was restored, Urania began to see magical shadows around people. This is a rather strange phenomenon, and even though she would like it, she cannot change anything. Each person and each shadow has a special shape and size. No one has ever had a similar figure, and all this will remain a rather individual thing. The girl still has no idea what it is, but in the mercenary guild, she noticed a shadow near Cass's hand. It was as strange as it could be, but she managed to figure out what it was. Another factor was the smell of blood. The beauty felt it as soon as the guy decided to come closer than 1 meter. There were no more secrets. I didn't want to believe it, but this is something special that Sade was talking about. This scoundrel should never be trusted, but this time everything worked against the main character. Trying to quickly change the topic of conversation, the young man asks, "Why did the interlocutor come here?" There were no problems with being in the castle, but something led her here. Cass holds out his hand again for his wife to write her answer on. There are no more gestures, so it is clear. A slight grin appears on the young lady's face. The man has already gotten so used to it that he extends his hand without even asking what she wants. This could not help but please, at least a little. Putting her elegant finger on it, the lady tries to explain the situation. She has to lie, but there is clearly no way out. According to her, this is an important childhood friend, and they haven't seen each other for a long time, that's all. Bowing, the Duke asks not to attract so much attention to himself next time. Such incomprehensible expeditions always lead to a huge amount of gossip. Mild surprise seems so commonplace now. I have to feel exactly like that almost all the time now. I can't believe Cassius would say something like that. In her heart, the lady was clearly and very angry. She did not understand why this attitude was directed towards her and not towards anyone else. She did not want this to happen. Trying to come to terms with her fate, the main character looks at the floor. Her thoughts suffer greatly because the Duke himself constantly gets into trouble and decides to read morals. This young man is known for rumors related to women. She managed to find out about it a few months ago, and it was not easy to accept, but there was nothing to change. As soon as a man shows up at any event, gossip of all sorts begins to spread. Girls crowd around, trying to attract the man's attention, even if sometimes it is unsuccessful. Sadness grips the heroine's insides. In the end, it's all because of her. It's all because his wife doesn't deserve such a husband. Because he's just wonderful. Quite unexpectedly, even for himself, the man asks not to even think about bad things. He does not like the thought of it, and that is why everything is exactly like this. He should be listened to. The Duchess looks away silently. She has absolutely nothing to say or to put forward as her protest to what has just been said. Thinking that he should explain the origin of the thing, the guy carefully brings the whistle to the lady's lips. All she has to do is blow into it to call someone for help. The thing ends up in the heroine's mouth. The instructions are given quite simply and in clear words, but this does not allow the embarrassment to evaporate. The eyes widen in surprise because the girl clearly did not expect such a good attitude towards herself. This was something new. The young man seemed completely unaware of his interlocutor's behavior. Her reaction was not particularly important to him, since the result or outcome was much more important. Continuing his explanation, he says that you just need to blow, but hold it with your hand. Urania's cheeks turn scarlet as the girl literally jumps away from the guy. The wheels no longer clatter on the tiles because the carriage has entered a softer, earthier surface. The sounds are no longer so annoying. Attention was diverted, but literally a second later, the lady sitting next to him reaches out to the man again. She needs to tell him something, and it is an extremely important thing. By placing her finger on the back of her gloved hand, the beauty draws some symbols, thereby saying, "Thank you." She is truly immensely grateful because the thing will certainly protect her. The carriage continues on its way. They should hurry to reach the castle on time without any delays. The blonde was clearly tired. Everything that had happened, as well as the sudden appearance of her husband, had tired her out quite a bit. She didn't want to admit it, but sometimes a vacation at the estate wasn't such a bad thing. Her head gently rests on the guy's shoulder. She doesn't have to say anything, just like Euclid next to her, because both of them don't care at all. The Duke says very quietly that he can do anything for the girl. Sitting in the hall on a comfortable chair, the blonde waited for the announcement, and she managed to wait. After some time, Lena appeared in the room, saying that Opilia had already arrived. An uncontrollable smile appears on the beauty's face. It seems that the maid managed to cope with her task just perfectly. It is hard to believe that everything happened so quickly. Turning to the servant, Irina asks if she has found out everything about Talia. It is important to understand who controlled the woman and why. The next morning, the hated person lectures her again. She is indignant, saying that she even walks with difficulty, but still went somewhere. The disdain is clearly visible on the maid's face as she continues to accuse the blonde. According to her, the Duchess makes life difficult for everyone and therefore will now go for a walk once every 2 weeks. Not daring to say a word, Rennie only frowns, realizing how fed up she is with all this. Perhaps the best way would be to get rid of the interlocutor, but for now that is difficult to pull off. The hand carefully takes out the note and then places it on the table. Moving the piece of paper in the other direction, she waits for her question to be answered. The note contained an interesting context. Euclid was interested to know where her money was going and how the servants were managing it. Everything had to be verified. Trying to avoid a direct answer, Talia nervously looks away and then tries to justify herself. It's her job, and she can handle it herself. The protagonist's patience is running out. The next thing she asks for is to show the accounts to understand the exact accounting of the papers. The surprised look literally drills into the interlocutor. There are no thoughts left in the head because the hostess voiced her request not through paper, but using her words. Not intending to bow down to anyone, the girl again asks, but more firmly, to show her the accounts of expenses and savings that she has accumulated over all this time. Turning only half a turn, realizing that Talia is not worthy of more, the blonde throws a final warning, menacingly drilling the woman with a cold gaze. The maid was amazed beyond measure. Almost stuttering, she mentions her mistress's voice. She can't believe that she can now speak and that she decided to take revenge for no apparent reason. The girl did not want to talk to the servants at all, but as if mocking, she looks at the maid with indignation. Now she has to humiliate herself, and Urania has become the mistress. Adjusting her hair with a slight movement of her hand, the girl tries to make sure everything is in the right place. Her voice has returned, but not completely. So preference is given to the other side, and she remains silent the whole time. The maid seemed to be starting to stutter. Osoba asked how Euclid could not tell his master about this. However, remaining completely unembarrassed, the blonde assured that she could do anything. It might just be temporary, and there's no point in upsetting Cassius. He won't be thrilled if his voice goes away. Trying to continue fighting for justice, Talia says that it is a duty and cannot be avoided, but she is unceremoniously interrupted. Paying no attention, the Duchess remains taciturn. It is this girl who decides who must do what here. There is no choice, and orders must be obeyed. The hostility and desire to do something bad or even worse than it is now takes over the woman. Perhaps this is not the best idea, but continuing to remain silent will definitely help. It seems that Urina's answer did not please her too much. This is obvious because the person is not yet particularly used to talking like this, and not everything turns out perfectly. Obvious things, however. A not very pleasant thought comes to mind again. The vision has not fully returned either, and even if this fact has visited the young head more than once, it does not make it any better. The girl asks again to bring the bills. Thalia, clasping her hands, starts mumbling something, clearly trying to get out of the situation. In the course of events, she lost the papers on which the expenses were written. Putting her hand to her cheek and squinting, the blonde understands that her interlocutor has decided to admit her guilt. This was not part of the plan, but it is also not the worst outcome. Not a second passes before the girl falls to her knees, her head on the floor. Now it's time for contempt to appear on the opposite person's face, and this is not the worst of options. Without getting up from the floor, the maid tearfully asks for forgiveness because it turns out she has squandered all the money. There is no regret in her voice at all. Surprised, Urania looks away, noting that it's not even winter yet, but the money is already gone. I wonder what needs to be done to make this happen. Continuing her excuses, the brunette suddenly remembers the health of her hostess. This is a great excuse. So the person talks about buying the most expensive plants, whose aromas are good for health. She couldn't plant all that for a girl who can't even see. Apparently, she just stole the money and split it with someone. It's simply unthinkable that it's even possible to squander the annual budget of the largest duchy in the empire. It's easier to just not think about it. So the blonde simply rises from her knees. Not believing her ears, the maid asks again if she will really be forgiven. Her eyes widen on their own, not believing such a miracle. Talia is a servant absolutely loyal to the duchy. Even despite all the intrigues she has created, the girl is still one of the best. The woman hates her mistress for only one reason, which is not so complicated. In her eyes, she is a disgrace to the Duke, and that says it all. It is unlikely that she stole this money for herself. We need to find out who her ally is because this will help to settle the matter much faster. The thoughtful expression makes it clear that the blonde has been lost in her thoughts for a long time. Whether this is somehow connected with Opilia's report, that is the question. The brunette recently told about one interesting detail. The woman was dating one man, and it was Gerard, the guardian of the Euclids. After the information was conveyed, Lena helpfully told even more interesting details. The guy was a known pervert and made a bunch of maids fall in love with him. It was a secret. I didn't want to believe it. But could it be that Gerard had seduced Talia, thus forcing her to work for him and help him steal money? Or perhaps the maid herself had deceived him. A male voice breaks her out of her thoughts. They are obviously addressing her, because someone is very interested in what they are doing here and why all this is happening. There are now not 2 people in the room, but 4. The Duke has just arrived, and behind him stands Lena, who with her whole appearance tried to warn about what happened. The scarlet eyes widen sharply, while the heroine herself does not understand where Cassius came from and how he managed to find out about everything. I didn't want to turn away, but it was obviously the best decision, so I had to do it. Looking into his eyes wasn't the best idea right now. Sometimes it seems that the guy sees his wife and therefore constantly finds her wherever she is. It is so easy that it even becomes scary. Without taking his eyes off the Duchess, the young man states the facts. She looks at him and then, as if in fear, quickly turns away, trying to avoid contact. Asking his question again, the young man clarifies whether it is true or just his imagination. The best solution would be to say something else, but there was no time to think about it. Smiling nervously, Irina tries to react to the situation as calmly as possible. That's the most important thing right now. Cass continues to stare at the room in silence. He asks something, but completely forgets to ask what is going on here. Apologizing for everything, Talia mumbles something, asking not to blame the mistress for the fact that the brunette is now in such a strange position. Without showing her sly smile, the girl tries to save face and play the victim. One of the most successful roles in her entire life. The young man's voice becomes even more angry when he says that, in my opinion, the interlocutor still does not understand anything. The maid in turn rises, asking again what happened. The Duke, tilting his head to the side, says that Urania has done nothing wrong, and no one has the right to blame her. This is clearly conveyed and understood in simple language. Looking at the floor with disdain, the guy smirks, not intending to disturb the couple. Talia should have gotten what she deserved for all her deeds long ago. Not daring to say another word, the man promises to return later and then leaves the room. He, too, has important things to do. Irina looks away, realizing that her husband has just defended his honor and hasn't said more than a few sentences. It's truly astounding. It's a dark night outside. The stars are shining brightly, helping the moon to at least light up the yard a little. She didn't want to admit it, but as soon as her vision returned, the girl began to look only at Cassius. Sometimes it is absolutely impossible to tear your eyes away, because the guy is unusually handsome, and his actions make you look even more. It is definitely not worth continuing to do this. If he doesn't realize it now, it could happen pretty soon, and it won't end well. If things go wrong, Euclid might even kill the young lady. Not that it will happen, but she will bring shame to his entire line, and that would be a well-deserved move. Cold sweat is just a nightmare. It always brings fear, and then these unpleasant sensations seem unreal. It is better not to think about it. I made only one decision for myself. If the Duchess failed to get a divorce, then I would have to immediately tell her that the girl was recovering. There would be no point in hiding it anymore. Some sound outside the window is really attracting attention. It's a bit scary, because it's already night, but at the same time, it's interesting what's going on. Getting out of bed, the heroine softly steps on the tiles, moving towards the window in small steps. She needs to find out what the problem is. Realization comes rather quickly. On the other side of the window, a messenger bird is beating against the glass. No longer surprised by anything, the beauty extends her index finger, allowing the little bird to land on it. There is something tied to the paw, and it is a letter from Seed. Untying the note, the girl takes the paper in her hands, noting once again that the author was none other than her old childhood friend. The seal was definitely his. Deciding not to delay for long, the blonde unfolds the paper and then straightens it out, placing it on the table. She should read the contents more carefully so as not to miss anything. The letter said that if the heroine wanted to learn about her magic, she should return. Callisto's services would, of course, cost her dearly, but there was nothing she could do about them. The package burst into flames with blue light. Not a minute goes by and the message just disappears. It's quite strange, but at the same time, the person who sent the paper was Said, so questions are brushed aside. There was no way out, and the girl had to get ready and go. Even if she wanted to leave magic, they still needed to meet, because there were other very important things. The gaze switches to the palm. Thanks to the white grass, the voice and vision have improved, but the pain in the body and neck has not gone away. In the past life, everything did not end well. At first, it started with typical pains all over the body. Then the nose started bleeding, and then everything led to a quiet death. The consequences of the poison are quite dangerous. Determination knew no bounds anymore. Callisto was needed as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would not be possible to find a worthy doctor in time. Usually, lunch is the appointed time for the servants to rest. The Duchess is not at all embarrassed by this, which is why she is walking along the corridors in a beautiful yellow dress. Finding herself in front of a beautiful door, the girl tries to figure out whether this is the right entrance or not. It seems that this is still Gale's office. The hand reaches for the door handle and then tries to pull it silently. I don't want to make any unnecessary sounds. Disappointment immediately shows on the heroine's face. The room turns out to be locked, which means the owner has gone somewhere. There was no time to wait, and there was no surprise anymore, so the blonde took care of everything in advance. Her hands reached for her hair, trying to find the right thing. The fingers pull out nothing more than a hairpin. This thing will help to open the door and get inside, and even if you don't want to do it, it's still a last resort. As she rummages through the lock, the young lady thinks about how grateful she is to Said for teaching her how to open rooms without keys. A joyful smile spreads across the beauty's face. It's hard to believe, but she definitely managed to pull off what she had planned from the very beginning. The gray-haired young man approaches the room. He clearly does not expect any trickery and is simply returning from a walk as usual. Surprise is reflected on the soft features because when the man pulled the handle, he discovered that the door was open, even if it was locked before leaving. Turning to the exit, the lady sees her humble servant standing before her. She wonders if he will be surprised by what he will find. Shock quickly shows on the butler's face. It seems that he will soon scream from everything that is happening. It is not clear to him what the mistress has forgotten here. Something obviously happened, so looking down, Gale asks what the reason is. He should have been called immediately, but this was not done in full. Continuing to smile silently, the girl does not show it at all. Thoughts are racing through her head, and one of them is about the man. How could he not be ashamed of himself for having given away the whole plan to Cassius? Not understanding what they were talking about, since not even a single word had left his mouth, the servant only looked at Euclid, awaiting the verdict. Coming closer, the young man waits for everything to be told to him. The blonde takes hold of the pen in order to voice her first question. A moment later, a small piece of paper appears on the table. The heroine wants to know if any new flowers have been planted in the garden. Something must have changed. Not knowing what to say, Gale just raises an eyebrow, clarifying the request. He's not sure about that, especially since only guards go there, and they don't often let anyone in. Without showing it, the girl continues to look at something, as if she had normal vision. Immediately, not for a minute, the servant asks again what happened. Thinking about her next question, the Duchess says that she is terribly interested in where the duchy's money is spent. It can't just disappear without a trace. The man, paying no attention, promises to bring the ledger. A moment later, the realization of what is happening comes. This time, the blonde did not use paper, but said something in her own words. Trying not to react, Urania, pretending not to understand anything, says that she completely forgot to tell him that her sight had returned. Isn't that wonderful? From the outside, the castle looks like nothing happened. Not a single soul knows what's going on inside. Putting his fist to his mouth, the man coughs a little, trying to smooth over the silence. He asks for forgiveness because the hostess surprised him a little. Pretending that she knows nothing, Rennie blinks her eyes, saying that she herself is very surprised. The butler, in turn, bows, noticing this miracle. The best solution now is to change the subject and return to what they were talking about. Slowly exhaling, the girl prepares her speech. Talia was supposed to keep records, but according to her, the duchy doesn't have that paperwork now. The man just shakes his head in surprise, refusing to believe it, since the woman said that the Duchess entrusted her with managing the finances. Trying not to show it, the heroine suddenly decides to tease Guile. She says that this is the first time they've just talked to each other like this. The sweet, feigned smile appears on the beauty's face again. The blonde asks whether she should again count on the servant to report everything to the Duke or not. The butler tries to speak, stumbling a little, but it comes out rather poorly. He doesn't want to go beyond the limits, but he also doesn't want to admit his guilt. Grabbing the first book with a blue cover that comes to hand, the beauty looks at the surface with interest. The man, it would seem, is about to explode from embarrassment. Looking at the title, the girl pretends to be extremely surprised because it says something about gays. Pretense will definitely take over the world. Not a second passes before Gale hastily snatches the book from the Duchess's hands, bowing and promising that he is now entirely in her power. The manipulation was quite easy. Milady's only wish was to meet Callisto, but without reporting to the Duke. She needed privacy. Almost crying from shame, the guy bows his head, trying not to complain about everything, including his ill-fated hobby. The butler quickly agrees. It couldn't be said that the girl didn't like such attention, even if she herself forced him to behave this way. But still, it was quite sweet of him. The bathtub is literally filled with slop. The dirty water gurgles, causing great irritation and disgust. Pretending that she is only enjoying it, Talia announces that the water is ready and you can go take a bath. She doesn't care about cleanliness at all. The Duchess stands with her arms folded neatly across her chest. She doesn't want to say anything, but taking a shower in these conditions is not the best thing to do, and that's a fact. Looking away, she wonders how she hasn't gotten tired of pouring poison and dirt instead of normal water every time. It can't help but be strange. Deciding to stand up for herself, the young lady turns around and heads for the exit. The only words she says are that she's going to take a bath in the downstairs room. Sticking her head out from behind the screen, the maid tries to take at least some measures to stop her, saying that everything is ready and waiting for the mistress. Trying not to be rude even if she really wants to, the lady comments on her refusal. She just doesn't like it here, and this is the reason for going down to another room. Talia looks like she's about to burst into anger. She can't believe this girl fought back after everything that happened before. This isn't what she was expecting. The beautiful hall is decorated with gilding. Dark colors with gold really go well together, and this cannot be contradicted. The water in the bath is quite clean and transparent, and so much so that there is no need to think about dirt. With her arms folded straight in front of her, the blonde enjoys the pleasant sensations, her head down. She hasn't felt this good in the water for a long time, because before it was more like a mockery. The heroine wants to move to the other side, but some strange sounds from the entrance bother her a little. The maid, having thrown the doors wide open, commands, asking to bring some furniture right into the room. She dared to behave like that, even if it was not specified in the rules of etiquette. Confusion quickly showed on young Eurelia's face. You can't bring anything into the bathroom while someone is there. She really feels uneasy. Out of nowhere, a male voice is heard, which means it's some servant. The thought process makes it clear that the clothes are too far away, which means the best option is to return to the bathroom. Trying to hide from prying eyes, the girl does not know where to start, while on the other hand, shouts and orders are heard again. Thalia's face lights up with a wicked color. This snake is clearly taking wild pleasure in trying to somehow ruin everything for everyone around her. The maid does everything for one reason only, because she has no other goal. She wants to dishonor the Duchess by showing her naked body to the servants, and then just laugh at everything that is happening. There is absolutely no desire to follow the lead of this upstart, and that is why the girl slowly goes to the bottom, clutching her knees. The beauty could have simply sunk into the water, but she wasn't going to give in to it. She shouldn't just come up and see that horrible expression on that person's face. The air slowly leaves the young lady's lungs. She doesn't want to admit it, but it seems she has lost this battle after all. She will have to emerge and thereby disgrace herself and the entire kingdom. A hand suddenly grabs the heroine's wrist, thereby pulling her out of the water right behind him. This was the help that should have been expected. Hands carefully throw a gray corduroy jacket right over the girl's shoulders, trying to somehow protect her from everything that is happening. Cassius looks straight into the eyes of his companion, advising her to put on the offered thing so that everything will become much easier. It will warm the girl and hide her from prying eyes. Turning his head to the other side, the man gives orders to the servants. If any of them value their lives, they must lie face down on the floor now, and this is not up for discussion. Hugging the young lady a little, the guy orders everyone to leave here, otherwise they will be in great trouble. This choice is not something easy, considering that he is not here at all. Realizing that words really do work, the The Duke watches as the two boys quickly, almost stumbling, try to run out. Turning back to his wife, the young man, slightly reproaching, remarks how careless she is. She should be more careful, otherwise everything could end up wrong. Looking down, the girl notes that Cass is probably angry. She's just embarrassing him in front of everyone around him, and that can't be denied. Suddenly, the body began to shake, as if someone was standing and shaking the poor girl. The heroine notices that the body gave in at the wrong time. The young man is still standing opposite and trying to understand what is happening here. He is also very interested in why this strange phenomenon has found its beginning. Euclid turns around abruptly and starts to leave. Perhaps he has nothing more to say, so he decides to run away without any explanation. And this is the reason. Various uninvited thoughts creep into her head, without asking permission at all. The man is probably so disappointed that he doesn't even want to talk to her. A sudden realization of what is happening comes to the young lady's mind. Maybe now is the chance to talk about divorce, and then everything will work out for the best. Cassius doesn't move. He just stands by the door. The beauty is still wrapped in his jacket, trying to catch up because now there is no room for error. Already almost next to her husband, the blonde wants to start a conversation, but she is interrupted by someone calling her name out loud. It is impossible not to stare at this handsome man. He is like a stone statue, and his beautiful eyes are like amethysts. Already bringing her finger to her palm, she hears about patience and that even it has its limits. Only one thing is unclear, and that is who she is in his eyes. It is worth quickly raising the topic she needs. The girl suggests a divorce, lowering her eyes to the floor again. She is ashamed to run after Euclid, trying to please him, but it is necessary, because she does not want him to be angry anymore. Frowning, the young man's patience seemed to have truly come to an end. Raising his voice, but trying to remain calm, he repeated that they would not get divorced. Exhaling, Urena, as if she did not expect another answer, nevertheless decided to ask if he blamed himself. The pupils dilate sharply as the young man asks again what she just said. Trying to speak as quietly as possible so as not to provoke anything, the beauty claims that everything happened because of her. Smiling only with the corner of her mouth, Rennie seemed to be trying to calm down, saying that she shouldn't blame herself, and that this couldn't possibly be what she wanted. Putting his palm to his forehead, he stares indignantly at the blonde. According to him, he doesn't think so, and why should he think in such a strange way when he can do the opposite? Narrowing his eyes, the guy suddenly says something strange. This Urania is a treacherous woman, even if it's not true in any way. The girl seemed to be in a state of great shock. She wondered what had happened that they were now talking to her in such a way. Turning to his wife once more, the husband asks, or rather warns, that the topic of divorce should never be raised again. Quick steps help to hide behind the door, leaving the lady completely alone. Hope seemed to be fading with every second, but then my gaze fell on the whistle lying on the side near the pool. Without thinking twice, Milady grabs the little thing, puts it to her lips, and then begins to blow, as if calling the Duke back. They haven't agreed yet, so there's no need to go anywhere. He has to stay so they can finish the conversation. Releasing the whistle from her hands, the girl freezes, while the young man again asks what she is doing and why she is doing all this. Running back, the man grabs the blonde by the shoulders, screaming in her face. They will never get divorced, and that's the end of the conversation. Leaning even closer to his interlocutor, he repeats his words, saying over and over again that this will never happen. Deciding that this is the most important moment to do something necessary, the Duchess tries to say at least one word, pretending that her voice is returning to her. The Duke's eyes widen. Becoming more confident, the girl tries to repeat the same word, but louder, so that it is clearer. There is no limit to the surprise. At first, completely silent, the guy just drills the floor with his gaze. It is surprising, but she can speak and thus leads to a stupor. Smiling her most charming smile, the beauty confirms his suspicions and asks him not to worry about anything like that anymore, since there is no need for it. Still trying to figure out what's going on, Euclid, already knowing the answer, still decides to ask in advance. Is this really the girl's real voice? He clearly doesn't believe that all this somehow became possible, but there is no way out, and he will have to believe. The girl, closing her eyes, silently nods her head. The first thought that comes to mind turns out to be the most successful. The man asks if she sees him now, to which he receives the expected answer. Yes, he clearly looks happy. His heart felt much lighter because he felt pain no less than physical because he could not change anything. Trying to calm her down and assure her that everything is fine, Urania claims that she is now completely fine and that there is really nothing more to worry about. Sharp but completely unexpected words escape the lips of the interlocutor. He promises to do everything that the young lady wishes. The only thing he would like is for the girl to stop shaking like a leaf because it seems like she is cold or afraid of something. The offer sounds quite tempting. Who wouldn't want to get everything they want out of the blue? Opening her mouth again, the blonde wants to ask for a divorce again, but she is interrupted. The man has taken care of this in advance, so he says that no divorce and Said Callisto. Surprised by such a strange condition, the girl does not understand what her old childhood friend has to do with it, but she still does not receive an answer. Turning again to the lady, the Duke asks again what she really needs. The wishes can be absolutely anything, regardless of size or price. A little embarrassed to ask, the beauty puts her hand to her face, trying to ask about what she needs, namely, some money. The first thing you need to do is meet with Said to find a worthy doctor. Only with the help of other people will you be able to fully recover. Eventually, everything will change, and when the girl is fully recovered, she will be able to live independently and normally. This plan is flawless, but for all this money is very important and necessary, without which nothing will work. Perhaps there is no need to rush into a divorce. The blonde really needs money, and perhaps not just a little, but a lot. If Cassius is worried about the heroine's condition, then it is worth waiting. And as soon as she manages to recover, she will immediately be able to free herself from such a burden. Continuing to ask for money, the beauty literally insisted on her request, and now the volume's increased. To clarify whether this is all for sure, the guy asks if the girl will continue to talk about divorce after fulfilling her request. Hearing a satisfactory answer, he only smiles. Realizing that this could make life easier, the Duke silently agrees with all the proposed options. There is no point in saying anything more. The guy advises to leave here, but the blonde first asks to call Lena so she can change. She doesn't really want to walk around in just a jacket. While in another room, the girl is waiting for the maid when a woman appears and immediately asks, "Whose jacket is this?" Coming closer, the brunette takes a closer look at the thing and then realizes with horror that it is the Duke's thing. The cheeks glow red. It seems that there is a complete mess in the maid's head. She is trying to somehow explain the whole situation without words. Pretending not to understand, Lena first looks at Cassius, who looks back but looks rather tired. The next glance is directed at Urania, but this time the girl puts her hands to her mouth because she wants to scream with joy. The maid clasps her hands together as if trying to express her genuine delight, even if she didn't quite get it. It's definitely worth it. A little nervous, the lady calls her friend by name as if trying to bring out a mountain of emotions in her. The hair on the brunette's head literally stands on end. She certainly did not expect such a turn of events, and it is unheard of for everything to happen in such a way. Jumping up and down, Lena runs up to the lady with lightning speed, trying to believe and check the reality of what is happening. It is completely strange and at the same time unusual that the voice has returned. No longer holding back her emotions, the beauty smiles. It is hard not to notice that her facial expression is completely sincere, because she is truly happy for her owner. I don't want to admit it, but Lena is the only person in the whole world who always cares and treats me well. Approaching the Duke, the maid asks the man to leave the room as the mistress wishes to take a bath. This time, everything should go much easier. The guy doesn't show any signs, not even saying a single word, which makes it clear quite a lot. Standing right in front of Urania, the maid seems to shield the young lady's body. She says that she knows about their untested first wedding night, but if he continues to stare like that, the girl will become uncomfortable. Spreading her arms out to the sides, the brunette tries to be as persistent as possible. It's amazing, but such a small and fragile maid manages to resist her own master. Trying not to show it, the young man slowly exhales. He understood everything and therefore can only agree and nod his head understandingly. It all looked like a small rabbit was fighting off a panther, while another one stood behind and watched it all. As soon as all the unnecessary people in the person of her husband left the room, the blonde decided to tell everything as it was. Lena's face expressed disgust. Only half an hour had passed, but when the girls came out of the bath, there was a rather tense atmosphere in the room. Two men were standing next to the maid, who was sitting on her knees. The young man did not immediately notice those present, but as soon as he did, he immediately turned around and called them over, asking them to come closer. Urania didn't know what to say, so she simply narrowed her eyes and tried not to react to everyone present, fully understanding that it wouldn't end that easily. Talia started making excuses again. It seemed like she was going out of her way to prove that she didn't mean to do anything, but it just happened that way. Euclid remains completely unshaken. He has already repeated 1,000,000 times that by insulting his wife, they insult him, but the woman obviously did not want to listen to this. The Duchess has absolutely nothing to say. She does not want to see all this, but she is also not able to object, because the lynching was carried out on Talia. Cass's eyes turned black with anger. Since when did a servant have the right to justify herself, especially after all she had done? The impudence had clearly exceeded all bounds. Normal words do not work on the maid as she continues to justify herself. She asked to listen to her, because Irina made it all up and is simply deceiving everyone without ceremony. Without thinking about her words for long, the woman stretches out her hand and points her index finger at the girls standing nearby. All this time, the lady pretended to do nothing and rest, trying to explain how naive everyone is because Renee was only taking advantage of her husband's kindness. Talia looks completely crazy. The girl tilts her head to the side and asks if the maid really thinks that way. She knew about her oddities, but she didn't think she would blame just anyone. Almost screaming, the brunette asks how she dares to look at her like that. The mistress is a liar, so it is necessary to switch back to brainwashing the master. Trying to calm the tension in her voice, the blonde asks if the maid can answer for her words, to which she receives yet another mudslinging. Deciding that it was time for a revelation, the lady began a conversation about the embezzlement of the budget, for which, as is known, Talia is responsible. Still not having the strength to come to terms with it, the woman continues to be indignant, completely not understanding what the young lady wants to say by this. The test has not yet been completed, but it has already been discovered that 30 times more than was required was spent on seeds for the garden. Trying to remain calm, the maid finally shut her mouth and stopped trying to protest at all costs. It was unclear where this hateful person found out about everything. All evidence was destroyed, but even this did not save the situation. The Duchess suggests restricting Talia's freedom during the investigation. Without even trying to listen to any arguments, the man turns and gives the order. The woman is to be locked in the Eastern Tower. Horror is reflected on the girl's face. It seems she will cry, but no one listens to her anymore because she has made quite a few mistakes. Not very pleasant memories overtake Urenia's mind. The East Tower is the very place where she was locked in her past life. The place is disgusting beyond belief. Even in a day, you get covered in dust, and leaving it is like being born again, because this tower devours all strength. My hands start shaking again. It was there, at the top of the tower, that the Duchess was locked away until she quietly passed away because of her own mistakes. A sudden blurring of vision came out of nowhere. It was difficult to stand on her feet, so she had to lean on the wall. Lena immediately ran up, asking if the lady was okay. A rough voice comes from right behind the maid. A stern tone, as if warning, saying that he is not to be trifled with. She is asked to step aside. The Duke approaches the couple and gently takes his wife by the shoulders. He doesn't know exactly how to help her, but there is definitely a way out. Lifting her up a little, the guy carefully takes the girl in his arms. He should treat her as carefully as possible, as if she were a porcelain doll. Urenia's eyes are tightly closed and a bead of sweat is rolling down her face, indicating that the girl clearly has a fever. It is completely unclear where to start, and a slight panic is reflected on the guy's face. However, he has no choice, since he must continue to do what he is obliged to do. The couple walks down the corridor. The bride seems to have regained consciousness a little, but is still like a weightless feather, unable to control her body. There's nothing left to do but stare at Cass. His thoughts can't get together, but he now knows that his vision and voice are fully restored. He's clearly surprised, but he doesn't ask anything. Deciding not to remain silent any longer, Renee starts a conversation, asking if her husband is interested in how it happened. The man stubbornly remains silent. He does not like being asked questions or asked about something he does not want to talk about. The girl didn't want it, but she accidentally noticed her hair somewhere near Cass's neck. Her hair is now absolutely everywhere. Attempts to pull out the scrap were not as successful as in the heroine's head. They just got stuck, and now it was all terribly awkward. Only a minute had passed when the realization hit the main character. She was only a few centimeters away from the man's face. Her face instantly turned red. Trying to push the young man away, the Duchess turned even pinker from embarrassment. It was hard to believe that a situation similar to this had just happened. No longer making any attempts to stop her incomprehensible flow of words, the girl talks about how handsome her interlocutor is. The Duke grins and asks if this is some kind of compliment, to which he receives a yes. It does sound rather strange, but which of them is perfect? Cass decides to conduct a survey anyway, So she asks how the voice and vision returned, to which she receives an obvious answer. It's all thanks to the herb that was found at the lake. It was the yang herb that served as an antidote, which helped a lot. Trying not to look into the eyes anymore, the heroine remembered how she was told that the young man brought her in his arms. Euclid exhales, but then admits that after that incident, he began to think about the young lady much more often. A slight pang of disappointment refused to give him a rest. It turned out that until now, he had been indifferent to both the Duchess herself and her illness. In principle, it was not even very surprising, since the Duchess expected exactly this kind of behavior. She treated the man coldly, and so it was obvious. An unexpected question suddenly breaks out, as if waiting for such a moment. The girl is interested in what the guy saw that day. Not quite understanding what is happening and what is being discussed, Cassius only asks again what exactly the question is. It's hard to say those exact words, but finding at least a drop of courage, Rennie mentions that incident in the bathroom. A sharp, stormy stream of mild anger washes over the Duke like a wave. He didn't know that his wife considered him exactly like that, and that's why she asks. Euclid already wants to say something and even starts a sentence, but never finishes it. His face contorts strangely, and then he falls silent. The young man's eyes widen because he doesn't understand what happened and why everything suddenly stopped. But looking at his interlocutor, everything becomes clear. Urania is already unconscious, lying in the boy's arms. Her cheeks are still red, either from embarrassment or from the heat. But the conclusion is one. She is not able to take care of herself. The last thing that came to mind was the frightened expression on the Duke's face as he quickly figured out what to do. It had been dark outside for a long time. There was a beautiful fireplace burning in the room, warming everyone around with its fire. Cass sits on a luxurious red sofa, looking off to the side. He thinks out loud about the girl's actions. She jumped into the lake after him, and that was the beginning of the end. It is not surprising that the guy developed great feelings after this kind of incident, even if in fact it happened long before that. He won't be able to turn away from the girl anyway because she is very dear to him, and it cannot be denied that she is also very pretty. Pensively resting his palm on his cheek, the young man recalls the divorce. It is still unclear why she raised this topic so calmly. There was a feeling that the lady had been preparing for this for a long time. Perhaps Said had something to do with it. There was no logic or logical chain to follow, but it was something to think about. The wood continues to burn in the fireplace, making a characteristic crackling sound. This does not interfere or even interrupt the thought process. The young people first met long before the wedding. The beauty came to the hospital to visit Duchess Euclid. It was hard not to look at this young lady because despite the loss of her voice and sight, she was all aglow. No one doubted that she was ready to jump into fire and water for others. Initially, the Duke was supposed to marry either Herod's eldest or middle daughter. However, after an incident in the hospital, the man decided everything for himself. Count Vincent asked to do this, and the guy, of course, agreed. Everything was fine except for one detail. After Urania became his wife, she stopped smiling altogether. The girl was always scared, and it seemed that someone was contributing to this. It couldn't be because of the Duke. A little more time passed, and the lady began to avoid the man. She did not seek a meeting with him, but on the contrary, tried to prevent any attempt to get closer. It was hard to understand why this was happening. Sometimes it felt like she was forced to marry Euclid. The guilt for everything that was happening grew and fell on the young man like a huge lump, so he began to avoid meetings with the blonde. No one knew that everything would turn out like this. If Urania wants a divorce for Callisto, then Cass will definitely not give in. She is his wife now, and he will definitely not give her to anyone. The guy gets up from his chair and heads for the exit. He's sure he can do more than that freak ever could. He doesn't care about anyone else. His attitude towards his woman shouldn't concern anyone else. He can try to make her happy as many times as he wants. Just like Urania, he had no intention of hesitating when he jumped into the icy water. The beauty lies on the bed, experiencing internal pain. The girl still hasn't opened up, hasn't given the essence of her soul to understand, but love can't be earned with a snap of a finger. Everything is still ahead. Breaking away from her thoughts, Cass walks up to the front door and pulls the cord, summoning one of the staff. A second later, a servant appears, bowing his head obediently, awaiting orders, and asks what is required of him. The head doctor is needed, preferably urgently. A few minutes later, the boy returns with a man in a white coat. The doctor looks quite serious, but becomes even more serious when he is told about the illness. Cassius's stern voice will put everyone in their place. He needs the Duchess to be treated, and in such a way that tomorrow she will feel better and no longer feel this bad. The hair is scattered across the pillow as if someone had deliberately arranged it that way. The girl lies like a sleeping beauty with her eyes closed, showing no signs of movement. It's already early morning outside. The sunbeams are trying very hard to get into the hall, even if all the curtains are tightly closed. Even without opening her eyes, the first thing she should do is put her hand on her face and then rub her eye. She doesn't know exactly how long she slept, but it wasn't a good dream. Sitting up in bed, the girl doesn't quite understand where she is and what day it is. It's quite annoying that she has such memory lapses and nothing works. A voice from somewhere to the left interrupts the simple morning routine. Someone exclaims, not believing that the blonde has finally woken up. Standing next to the bed is none other than Lena. She smiles, genuinely happy about such a miracle. Perhaps she really missed her mistress. Then everything is again as if in a fog. The maid rushes around the room with the speed of the wind, looking for a tray, and then brings it, providing the necessary medicines. Surprise freezes on the beauty's face for a split second. Everything happened too quickly. The maid, almost crying, talks about how worried she was. Looking down at the floor, the Duchess does not express any emotions. The only question that interests her is, why? Trying to explain the situation, gulping in more air and trying to calm down, the friend talks about how worried everyone was. This is not a joke, but the girl slept for 2 days. The heroine's eyes immediately widen because she thought that much less time had passed than 2 days. This is not a good sign. Realization hits the blonde, and she understands that things are clearly bad. Something needs to be done, but to do this, she needs to at least get back on her feet. The first thing that comes to mind is the meeting with Sade. The Duchess herself appointed it today, although her friend did not insist on anything. Last time everything fell through, which means that a repeat mistake cannot be allowed. A sudden blurring takes over the gaze. Dark shadows blur, obscuring the vision. It's as if someone has splashed black and blue paint in front of your eyes. You want to wipe it off and get better visibility, but that doesn't happen. Lena runs up lightning fast and carefully supports the lady, trying to forbid her to get up. She has not yet fully recovered, which means it is not time to get up. Realizing that she was already late anyway, Urania thought with disappointment about what to do. Perhaps the best solution would be to schedule a meeting for another day. Taking the comb in her hands, the maid begins to comb her friend's long locks, telling her something at the same time. They are in the Duke's room, and all this time he has been courting his wife. The maid stood up abruptly and began to impersonate the master, or rather, the pose in which he brought the blonde into the estate. The brunette seemed ready to scream with joy. Urania decided not to interrupt her thoughts, as she thought that she was imagining everything again. After some time, as soon as the interlocutor calmed down, the topic changed to something more important. According to the maid, Cassius sent money to manage the estate. This will make things much easier. The heroine's face lit up with joy, and she began to smile. Her request was fulfilled in the best possible way, and therefore it could not help but please. A beautiful chest with a pile of gold was placed in front of the Duchess. It was impossible to say that it was small in size, because the chest was simply enormous. Slowly opening her mouth in surprise, the girl exclaimed to herself, not understanding how this could have happened. She really needed money. That was more than enough. Suddenly, Lena said that this was not all. According to her, with such a man, you can build a whole estate. The blonde did not know what to say. Deciding to pull herself together, the mistress falls silent and then turns to the maid again. She needs to ask for something. The only request would be that all this money be placed in a vault that only one person has access to. While people are taking away all the gold, it's time to think about how to use all this money properly. This is the most interesting activity. Not much time had passed, but the young lady had already managed to move to the dining room. It was not difficult for her to move around the castle. Approaching the door, it opened, and the girl successfully walked inside and then sat down on the chair. Directly opposite sits the Duke, who decides to remain completely silent for the time being, but to look literally into the very soul. Rising from his seat, the man approaches and gently moves the heroine's chair, asking how she is feeling. Perhaps it really is important to him if he is so worried. It's better to use a less verbose vocabulary and just say that everything is great. Smiling, the guy is happy with this news. There is complete silence after that. The lady thinks only about that incident in the bathroom. After everything that happened, it is somehow too awkward. Cass doesn't seem to feel any awkwardness at all because she starts talking about something completely different. Don't overexert yourself. because your health is much more important. Recalling another detail, the lady thanks her husband for staying with her all night. The answer is dry and unusual because it is only his duty. Also, money will definitely be useful. You definitely shouldn't pretend to be modest, otherwise the man might not like it. Bowing his head in agreement, he only says that if there is not enough, she should just say so, and they will immediately send her more. All that remains is to agree. Thoughts are occupied with something completely different, namely, how beautiful he is today. The power of money is quite strong, and there is no denying it. Sometimes it takes over your thoughts and makes your head spin, but it is worth it. A familiar voice breaks her out of her thoughts. Cassius reminds her that the Duchess has not only duties, but also privileges. Don't get worked up about anything and everything. The best option is to simply enjoy your life as best you can. This man has tried to show the advantages of the Duchess from the very beginning, even if it is all for his reputation. The Duchy of Euclid is a family with a long history, comparable to the imperial one. Even the emperor himself is no authority for Cassius. He didn't want to remember, but that was why Count Vincent had set his sights on this man. The father wanted to make the girl his puppet. With her help, destroy everyone around, and then even destroy her, but nothing worked. A hand in a white glove carries a tray and then holds out a plate with a dish. Some strange orange soup that smells incredibly appetizing. Turning to the servant, the girl refuses the next dish. It is difficult to explain why, but this is what she needed. The guy straightens up and meekly agrees. He promises that everything will be done, which means there will be no next snack. Noticing the strange behavior of the person standing next to her, the heroine smiles nervously, asking what is going on. Trying not to make a mistake, the young man bends down and then closes his eyes. The hostess's voice is terribly beautiful, and this is the real reason. Euclid's face becomes angry in a split second, so much so that his eyes begin to darken. It seems that the interlocutor has lost his fear. The Duke noisily puts the cutlery he was dining with down on the table. He doesn't like the servant's behavior, and that says it all, even without any debate. The boy quickly apologizes, while the blonde's eyes widen to an impossible size. It was a rather incomprehensible attack. The eyes are again fixed on the plate. The food is no longer very interesting, but the husband's gaze on the back is quite scary. It is unlikely that the girl will ever get used to it. There's no need to even turn around, because this way you can also feel everything perfectly. The look literally burns a hole. Turning towards the guy, the lady realizes that he is still staring, but it is difficult to know why exactly. His gaze is no longer intimidating, but simply calm. Without thinking twice, the blonde makes the first request that comes to mind. The best solution would be to fire Talia, to which she quickly agrees, and then the question of breakfast. Pretending that she doesn't understand what's going on, the beauty just shakes her head. She's not going to eat anything else, and that's it. This news did not make the interlocutor very happy. You need to eat more and thus maintain your health in a normal state. A plate of food immediately appeared in front of the girl. Her face stretched out from surprise and the speed of the actions, but if this was her duty, then she would have to do it. The girl stared at the plate. The only thing that could be noticed was the deliciously laid out products that smelled nice. The young man was a little embarrassed, realizing that he had said something inappropriate again. It was too late to justify himself, but it was worth a try, so he said that he hadn't meant it that way. Turning to her interlocutor, obvious confusion was reflected on the beauty's face. Perhaps she simply misunderstood something, or perhaps everything was much more complicated. Cass was quite frightening with his habits, and sometimes I just wanted to run away and not listen to all this. In order to remain calm, Euclid asks if he scared his betrothed when he ordered her to eat more, to which he received a simple answer. The girl simply had not eaten meat for a long time. The peric herb has a strong effect on digestion, so every time after trying to eat meat, the heroine felt sick. Now the best way was to eat calmly and chew slowly. The food really did smell wonderful. The fork carefully pierced the meat to then send it into the mouth. The piece disappears in the mouth as if evaporating. I can't wait to chew it all and get good taste sensations and pleasure. This dish is simply magnificent. It seems as if there are even fireworks all around, broadcasting about the wonderful subtleties of taste. The blonde was secretly happy. She hadn't tasted really good meat for a long time, so this was completely new. Chewing was quite difficult as the teeth were not used to such food, even if the food was cooked really well. Cassius chuckled, asking how it was that she was so wildly delighted with just one piece of meat. Without saying a word, the girl just looks away. This moment is terribly reminiscent of something else that she had already managed to see before. The incident in the bathroom is very similar, but at the same time, it is completely unclear how it happened that the person thought about all this. The picture didn't want to come out properly, but even in this situation, the girl turned absolutely red, like a tomato. Trying to clear her throat and thereby forget about everything that is happening, the beauty replaces her thoughts with something different and completely unfamiliar. Not a second had passed before the husband immediately perked up, asking about this strange cough. He couldn't believe that his wife was still unwell. Smiling and trying to change the subject, the blonde argues that she is not quite used to talking yet. She cannot say that she choked while thinking about the handsome man's face opposite. The words were not very convincing, so the brunette called Gail to call a doctor. Any deviations should be checked personally. The butler is already standing by the table in a split second. He is appointed responsible for Urania's health. Anger takes hold of the young girl. However, if you think about it, Guile is really talented, because after working with Cassius for so long, he is still fine. His position is quite difficult. Interrupting his thought process, the man turns to the woman again, asking if she likes the food. Lifting the napkin and then putting it to her lips, the girl only quietly says that everything is fine. For the first time, she managed to eat so much meat. The Duke bows his head in confusion and asks again, as if he had misheard. It is hard to believe that this is the first time this has happened. He didn't hear right. So the next step was for the guy to push forward a plate with a wonderful dessert in the form of strawberries and a tartlet. The eyes widened and the mouth dropped open in surprise. It seemed that instead of a cook, the owner had accidentally hired an artist. Without thinking twice, the Duchess grabs the cake and brings it to her mouth. She absolutely must try everything. The eyes light up and a living sparkle shines somewhere near the pupils. This food is truly a work of art. Without paying attention to anyone, as if to herself, the blonde talks about how delicious it is and how much she wants another serving. The heroine tries such tartlets for the first time, and here it is a completely different story, because it is different from meat. When the girl lived in the palace due to health problems, no one wanted to feed her cakes, and only Sade managed to bring something tasty. The already familiar level of anger returns to its original state. The eyes narrow as the young man asks again about Callisto. Without any extra thought, Rennie says yes, and then continues to eat the deliciousness that she just wants to destroy completely. This answer clearly does not suit Cass, but he just continues to remain silent. He has nothing to say, because he does not want to spoil the mood of everyone around him. The Duke finds a bell in his hand, which is usually used to summon servants. The sound spreads throughout the chambers. In just a few minutes, a variety of food appears on the table. Many colorful dishes with beautiful and appetizing fruits on top. A surprised look runs over all the potions, while the girl does not understand at all how she can manage to eat everything in one go. Having tried everything, eyes run in different directions, while the beauty thinks more and more about preserving her figure and health. Looking further along the table, the blonde notices that there is, of course, a bit too much food here. But at the same time, that's not bad. The guy is clearly pleased with his work. He managed to make the heroine feel good and enjoy herself at the same time, without even starting to eat. A beautiful alley planted with roses and climbing ivy. This road is simply beautiful, but it is a secret place in the garden which the servants avoid. Someone's heels click on the tiles, and then the sound of a man approaching is heard. The person approaching says that he was waiting for the Duchess. A hand in a white glove holds an incomprehensible small bag in the palm. The man seems to be offering to accept the thing. The blonde looks at her interlocutor, trying to understand what is being offered to her and thinking that she can split the opponent with a look and get answers. Gail smiles, finally revealing that inside are cookies for the road that she might like. Words of gratitude are all the heroine can offer. The next words were about the former maid. The girl was right, because Talia and Sir Gerard sometimes met. These meetings took place more than once a week. The realization hit like a wave. Ophelia had been right all along, and her information shouldn't have sounded strange. There was no reason to distrust her. Gerard suggested expanding the temple. The servant hands over an old dark notebook, saying that it is the knight's ledger. It is worth taking a look at what is inside. Opening the thing and examining the pages, Urania notes that such an innovation would have cost a huge amount of money, but there are no expenses at all, as if someone was trying to cover up the tracks. One little line gets a lot of attention. Secondary income is where a lot of the money is reportedly going. Taking the notebook, the young man looks at the pages in surprise. Secondary income is the amount withdrawn after the project is completed. Usually it is no more than 10%, but here everything is different. An interesting thought comes to mind from an unexpected place. The head of the knights could take all the money for himself in this way, and reporting exists for the law. The servant nods in agreement, to which he receives another thank you. The Duchess really needs assistance in order to finish the investigation as quickly as possible. The topic of conversation changed and returned to normal. The butler announced that Sade had arrived 5 minutes ago and was now waiting in the hall. The best option was to just meet him at the estate. No need to go anywhere and overexert yourself when everything is right here. The girl hurried inside and after a while entered the main room. It was hard to see from behind the back of the chair, but if you dig through the hair, you can see anywhere. Smiling, Urania happily runs up to the guy. She is truly happy to see her old friend, and she doesn't care how he behaves. The man, without showing it, simply turns around and a sly but kind smile lights up his face. Surprise quickly turns to shock as he finally hears Renee's voice. He can't believe his friend has regained her ability to speak. Trying not to show his happiness, the young man decides to joke again, complaining that the blonde no longer squeaks. Not quite understanding how his voice managed to recover so quickly, the handsome man thoughtfully puts his fingers to his chin. He should guess, but it's difficult. Trying not to pay attention to such trifles, the girl only confirms what happened because everything was restored really quickly. Callisto is finally silent, but it's always like that with him. There's a calm before the storm, and it's not always a good thing in this case. The Duchess bowed her head as if silently asking questions. She wondered what Side wanted and what his next move would be. The man folds his arms across his chest and asks for his precious time to be returned. His girlfriend has wasted it twice, and now she won't get away with it so easily. As if mockingly, Callisto notes that even the third time the lady managed to be late. This was already inhuman. Trying to apologize, the beauty tries to justify herself, saying that last time she had a good reason because she felt very bad. Realizing that they are about to waste a lot more time, Sade tries to change the subject by leaning towards his interlocutor. Reaching out his hand, his friend runs his fingers through his snow-white hair, and then just as slowly removes his palm, as if doing it to tease. The girl was clearly not very pleased with this attitude towards herself, but since he was an old acquaintance of hers, she had no choice. The young man's eyes light up with curiosity. Leaning even closer, he asks what happened and why she can now talk. Eyes close in laughter as Sade tries to be as friendly as possible towards the others. This look made it clear that the man was already impatient to find out all the details, down to the smallest ones, even if it was not particularly important to him. The books stand in neat stacks on the shelves. Some of them could be useful, but not all of them. The story is coming to an end. The blonde has told absolutely everything except returning to the past. This game is too dangerous for anyone's ears. Callisto puts his hand to his cheek, showing how bored he is, and mumbles something about how bored he is here. This needs to be fixed. Straightening up, the Duchess, clearly offended by her friend's behavior, decides to make a joke, saying that the young man only needs stories about perversions. Deciding not to be distracted from the pressing problem, the brunette turns to Rennie again. It seems to him that he sees something, and it is strange. The girl has a strong magical aura. A person who sees all these things can quite easily see a beautiful color distributed around the blonde. The girl frowns. She is not here to listen to all this, but to find out what kind of magic has begun to bubble up in the young body. Leaning forward, Urania literally pins Side down, not even giving him the right to move. He has no choice but to tell her everything. The facial features change dramatically, and instead of a cheerful expression, a wary and serious one takes its place. The guy said that he knew nothing, because they were still small children, but from the age of 12, he began to feel the growing power. That's when the whole situation started spinning. Confirming his words, the young man only added that perhaps Count Vincent did something to Rennie, and that was precisely why she was now having a lot of problems. Right now, at the moment, the power is sealed, but over time it is released drop by drop. Everything is just fine. But over time, magic tries to break out, never sparing and without asking permission. Putting her finger to her mouth, the girl sighs in surprise. She can't believe that such a thing exists, and all of this is right inside her. Continuing her thoughts, Urina notices that Callisto is such a handsome man, and also smart. It is difficult not to notice when a person is nearby. Already starting his tirade of sarcasm and jokes, the guy suddenly stumbles, asking what was just there. The heroine, it would seem, does not pay attention at all. She rejoices in the fact that her friend has seen the magic in her, and now she must begin to do something about it. The boy turns away. unsure of what to say. There was some not-so-good news, too. It was worth remembering that only Count Vincent could completely remove the seal. Suddenly, an interesting detail emerges. When the girl was 12, her father brought a wizard to the house to perform a ritual. Being still very little, the blonde was scared and did not understand what was happening. She did not want anything to be done to her. The magician looked quite frightening and seemed to be looking straight into the soul of the main character. She was not pleased with this, although Vincent did not ask her anything. Trying to retreat in the hope of running away or hiding somewhere, Rennie didn't know what to do. A hand falls on her shoulder. A moment later, it doesn't stop there, and the hand runs across the face, and the thumb with a massive ring ends up right between the eyes. The frightened look seems to drill a hole into everyone passing by. It is difficult for the girl to understand how this will all end, so it is easier to accept it. When this wizard touched the woman's body, it was as if part of the essence had evaporated somewhere. One of the most disgusting sensations I had ever experienced. Instead of magic, unbearable pain appeared, from which the lady passed out, and does not remember anything further. It is hard to believe, but it seems that Vincent decided to take away the powers. The Empire had been fighting monsters for many years. These creatures were no worse than people, because they did everything precisely. And because of this, they could not complete what they started. 30 years ago, right before the end, the wizards and warriors were at the very top. These individuals were the most important. With warriors, everything is simpler, but to raise a wizard is a task with a star. It was after meeting such a person that Uranius was forbidden to leave the estate. Obviously, the Count was trying his best to prevent any possible consequences. This man is absolutely disgusting, and there is no point in asking. Suddenly, a friend's voice pulls him out of his memories. He reminds me of himself, asking what could have broken the seal. As far as we know, such magic can last for hundreds of years. An interesting thought comes to mind, even if there is no time to think about it. Perhaps the poison of the parrot grass helped speed up the process. Callisto closes her eyes in agreement. That theory didn't sound so bad, in the expert's opinion. However, the Duke could not help but notice the power growing inside his wife. It is only a matter of time, but perhaps he has already noticed or will soon notice. Cutting all the wires, Euclid says that the guy is now in the capital and therefore does not know about it. There is still a week left. Deciding to change the topic to something more interesting to her, her friend turns to Sad, asking how she can hide her powers without harming everyone else. By putting his palm to his face, the man pretends not to know how while repeating the question asked. But this is just a lie. Moving his hand away, the young man smiles, saying that of course he knows how, since he has long been prepared, knowing exactly where he is going and why. Rennie's brows furrowed as she began to talk about some junk. Some extremely valuable thing that needed to be kept. Pulling the item out of his pocket, Callisto reveals a special blue bracelet. He can't wait to see the reaction. Realizing that there is absolutely no point in trying to say anything, the blonde asks how much such a miracle will cost. An old friend, he certainly didn't expect such a straightforward approach. Even laughing, he names the price of 300 zlotys, pointing with his fingers. There is no surprise as the Duchess states that it is cheap and costs almost as much as a dress. Questions pour in from side, but folding her arms, the girl mentions that one should not underestimate the wealth of the duchy. The thing quickly falls into the hands of a young lady. She can't help but be happy about it because this bracelet will save her from literal collapse. The thought that she has finally given the chance to know what it is like to be rich warms her thoughts. A friend nearby complains that he did not ask for more. Forgetting about this incident, the man asks to extend his hand. The instructions have been given, and all because there are not so many functions here. It is worth pressing the main stone to hide your powers. While showing where to press to release it, the friend also informs about another small detail. The bracelet will only last for a month. Disappointment envelops the main character when she asks again if this is true. It was clearly not expected that there would be such a short period. Not happy with this reaction, Callisto begins to justify himself, saying that this thing is very rare, and also without side effects. Extending his hand, he asks for the thing back. Realizing that there is no other option, the girl hides her hand, refusing such an offer. After all, everything can still be fixed. Cassius must never learn about the magical powers. If necessary, you can buy another copy of this, and then it will simplify the situation. Changing the subject again, recalling one important detail, the heroine asks about her treatment. The brunette promised to find her a good doctor. Smiling, the young man, as if nothing had happened, invites the lady to the capital for a celebration in 2 days. Just what is needed. Not expecting such a turn of events, the beauty stares and asks again. She had not heard about the celebration. Already getting up from his seat, the guy talks about the right person who will definitely appear there at the right moment. Don't underestimate people. Trying to object, Euclid is clearly trying to hold his friend back with his words. It doesn't work very well. A smokescreen appears out of nowhere. It seems as if someone pulled this trick on purpose, and everyone even knows who it was. Turning towards his friend, the brunette winks, promising that they will see each other again in the near future, and then disappears. Coughing, the Duchess thinks how tired she is of this. The best option would be to leave like a normal person. The most beautiful dessert stands right in the middle of the table. The exquisite taste and pleasant aroma are so tempting, trying to make you eat it. The blonde takes a spoon in her hands, then dips it into the mold, and then smiles. This is an incredibly delicious delicacy, without a doubt. In her past life, the heroine was deprived of such joy, and it was quite sad. I didn't want to remember how the young lady suffered. Count Vincent, by all laws of logic and calculations, should very soon try to do something and thereby ruin everything. The door opens quietly, and Gale appears in the room. Bowing obligingly, the guy doesn't say a word, just looking at his interlocutor. A quick smile appears on Euclid's face. She must always be friendly and keep up appearances to stay in the servants' circles. The man did not quite expect such behavior, but still did not particularly show his embarrassment, saving face. Leaning forward, the guy announces that the designers will arrive in an hour, to which he receives an easy consent. The blonde can no longer wait for this. The tray, which had been in his hands all this time, lands neatly on the table. The young man helpfully talks about the sweets he brought. Smiling, he says that children like this. On the plate lies a pink candy, similar to marshmallow, cut into small cubes. The girl is 20 years old and an adult, so this attitude is bad for her reputation. There is nothing left to do but ask what the problem is. Gale doesn't mean to spoil anything because he just thought about God when he saw the caramel. Although he's right about something, because apart from Opilia's child, the blonde is the youngest here. As you know, Cassius is also quite young. He is only 25 years old. He is not much older than Uranius, but still. Lena, in turn, despite her appearance, is already 29. She looks quite young, so you might think that she is 20, but no. It is obvious that all the servants are older than the mistress because they are hired only after 20 years. This is not sad news. An unexpected question pops into my head and then slips out of my mouth in a split second. The girl asks how old Gale is. Deciding not to argue and to answer immediately, the butler silently looks away and then says that he is 39 years old. The hand weakens, allowing the spoon to fall out of the palm. Perhaps surprise had such an effect on the beauty because she did not expect this. A beautiful spoon ends up on the floor, waiting for someone to pick it up since its owner dropped the item. Her eyes widen and her voice becomes filled with horror. The girl really thought that the servant was not much older than her, and that was why she behaved like that. She could think anything she wanted, and think that he was between 20 and 30 years old, but not nearly 40. Trying to show ethics in communication, the beauty puts her hand to her mouth, clearing her throat. She is interested in the secret of the butler's youth. A crazy thought comes to mind, but is it really all because of a hobby? This can't be, because it's nonsense, but who knows? The guy tries to change the subject, asking what he was ordered to do with Talia. The girl immediately understands that the conversation on this topic is closed, which means she needs to continue talking about something else. Smiling, the blonde claims that everything is fine, and therefore it is worth waiting for now until the investigation is over. Agreeing with the Duchess's answers, the young man is about to turn around, but a voice interrupts. The blonde asks if her husband did anything to her. A slightly relaxed tone helps to calm down, and Gale says that this did not happen, because the man completely entrusted the matter to his betrothed. It seems that Cass does not want to worry Urania and is trying to take care of her health and well-being as much as possible. This man certainly cannot excite the young lady, because just one look from him makes the blood run cold. Standing up abruptly, pushing her chair back, the girl notes that she urgently needs to meet with Talia. More information never hurts. Turning and heading for the exit, the Duchess is almost hidden behind the door, but the servant's voice stops her. He asks if she will let the woman out. Compared to the Duke, the blonde looks much kinder, and this is one of her greatest advantages. The East Tower is illuminated by the sun, but at the same time, a strange, unpleasant feeling hovers all around. The lady confidently heads towards the entrance, while the guy walking behind her asks again and again if the lady is really going there. He doesn't want bad consequences, because if something happens, the heads of the guards and servants will fly. Everyone will be bad. Pausing, but only for a moment, the beauty gives the men a cold look, declaring that he is exaggerating. This cannot be real. Gale still won't back down, trying to resist. The Duke himself made it clear that Euclid's safety is everyone's personal responsibility, and there is no choice in this. Sadness, for obvious reasons, descends upon the girl. It seems that now she cannot go anywhere alone. With her head bowed and her hands holding the hem of her dress, the blonde walks sullenly up the stairs. She shouldn't act like this, but she has no choice. It's hard to control your emotions, especially when you're alone with those pesky stairs. It's hard to believe she has to climb them again. Perhaps the maiden is still weak, or it is simply a slippery staircase, but the leg slides down as if broken. Not a second passes before the lady flies down the stairs, but one of the servants, screaming, grabs her shoulders, thereby saving her. Laughing awkwardly, the girl says words of gratitude because she did not fall. But still, she did not need anyone's help. She did not want to admit it. The green-haired guy, who was quite nervous, points with his hand in which direction to go. After what happened, the heroine almost fell a couple more times, while literally everyone around her was afraid for the safety of the Duchess. The blonde's body literally flew in different directions, realizing that it was difficult for her to stay on this rise. She was still so proud that it was better not to ask for help. However, this is not so important because it all ended well, and the beauty managed to reach the dungeon without any bad consequences. Someone behind, but very close, claps his hands. Perhaps it is an honor bestowed upon him, or simply a coincidence. One of the servants exclaims how well the mistress tried. It costs a lot to put yourself in this position and do everything in the best possible way. The girl, realizing that she was about to explode, was almost shaking. It seemed that the guards were simply collectively mocking her without any right to do so. Smiling a fake smile, the girl asks again if this was all done on purpose, although even a small child would see it. Everyone present is trying to pretend that nothing happened. It seems so to everyone. That's why they decided to make such a dubious compliment. As we climb further and approach the confinement room itself, even from afar, Talia's loose hair is visible. She sits, looking at the floor. Thoughts devour the blonde. Because of her parents, the maid stepped onto the path of evil. But initially, she was not so strange and evil. Even despite all these factors, the maid did a lot of nasty things, and the Duchess managed to suffer a lot because of her. No longer in her thoughts, coming very close, the lady asks in a quiet voice how she is doing here, being in captivity. A tired look rises to the beauty as she continues her tirade. Talia has to live in dust and dirt, drink dirty water. Hands shake and then helplessly grab the shabby iron bars. A hoarse voice calls out the name of the interlocutor, trying to convince her of something. Falling to her knees again, the woman begins to cry and beg for forgiveness. She screams something about how she was forced to do it and she didn't want to do it. A proud, cold gaze drills the girl, trying not to give itself away. The blonde sighs and then asks who did it. The second time is more strict. Answers are needed to find out who is responsible for all this, but the answer does not come out properly. Euclid doesn't hesitate long and mentions Gerard. Perhaps it was the same man and all this was his doing because it was a good theory. As if there were no bars, Rennie leans even closer to see the regret in the eyes of the maid, who stops crying and now silently looks off to the side in horror. If this girl is holding on for something or someone, then it's time to break her. It will benefit the investigation and will definitely speed up the case. The Duchess knows exactly how to do this, so lowering her voice half a tone, she orders the prisoner to be released. Coming out into the world, the woman cannot believe that all this is happening to her. There are too many events that are clearly unexpected. Squinting, Talia covers her face with her hand. It's bright and unusual. It makes you want to run to the other end of the world, back into the darkness. The blonde, without even turning to her interlocutor, orders her to take a bath first, and then they can chat over a cup of tea. Trying not to cry, the maid mumbles something. She will never forget the kindness of the mistress, and now this is not discussed. Eyes narrow, realizing that this is all fake. This can hardly be called kindness, even if it is considered as such. Uranius would never forget the stench of dirty water and floor rags, and how servants freely entered during bathing. While in the castle, the lady gives orders to the young man. He is obliged to guard the bathroom and not to let her escape under any circumstances, if there are any attempts. The lady is no longer interested in Talia's condition. She just has to wait until the notification comes that the maid is ready to talk. The passing mistress gives reasons to stare. Half of the servants are already aware of everything that is happening, and some of them do not understand it. The maid, with her head down, does not dare to say a word. Control is not on her side now, and therefore it is not under her control. The procession of 6 people moves further through the castle. 2 servants hold the prisoner's hand so that she does not try to escape. The woman was indeed wrong. It is too early to think that this is kindness, because Rennie is vindictive and does not forgive so easily. The neck itches and the legs leave red marks that do not heal. The mouth opens in a silent cry of pain. The eyes widen as Talia herself curses the lady. She shouldn't have been trusted, and she should have been on her guard. Perhaps the person wants to take revenge and make you wash in the slops. The body itches literally everywhere, and the unpleasant sensations make you shudder. It wasn't even 5 minutes before the Council of Opelia and Lena were deciding what had happened. The maid ran out naked as soon as she saw the bathroom and screamed something about slop. A slight note of surprise was reflected on the beauty's face. It was unclear what terrible thing had happened to her there in the dungeon. Irenia had planned to talk to the prisoner, but it seemed that she was in no condition at all. Sighing, the girl ordered that the girl be allowed to come to her senses. So many questions and so few answers. Not the best situation to be in right now, but not the worst either. It's midday outside. The sun is shining mercilessly because it's already far away summer. I want to curtain all the windows and never go out, but this is not the best solution. Holding a cup of tea in her hands, the girl is lost in her thoughts. Gerard clearly used Talia and brought her to this state and, accordingly, to the dungeon. Unfortunately, the lady does not have the rights to question Euclid's guards, even if she really needs to. As the law states, the Duchess can only manage the internal affairs of the estate, and she simply has no rights to do more. The Duke, in turn, has full control. Cassius has the right to command and talk to the Order of Knights. Out of nowhere, Gale appears again. He bends down, announcing that the designers from the atelier have finally arrived. This long-awaited meeting. The order to let them in is carried out with lightning speed. A huge number of dresses, hung in a row, one after another, appear in the room. The room is no longer empty because it is all filled with accessories. A huge full-length mirror is also here, for the convenience of trying on clothes. The heroine's mouth drops open in surprise. She had never dreamed of such a number of things, even in her wildest dreams, and this is no joke. 2 beautiful girls appear in front of the blonde and begin to introduce themselves, wishing her good morning. The shorter one is Sasha, and the brunette is her assistant Mina. Smiling, Urania introduces herself as well, saying how glad she is to meet them and that they should take care of her. Trying to wave her hands in protest, the pink-haired girl suddenly says that she shouldn't introduce herself like that. Deciding not to argue in order to speed up the situation, the Duchess agrees and remains silent so as not to ruin her reputation even more. The girls seem to be very impressed. They didn't know that the mistress of the estate was such a beautiful and pleasant woman. Distracted from the conversation, Sasha approaches the hanger and points at the clothes, offering to demonstrate already finished outfits that can be tried on. Bowing her head in agreement, Rennie asks to see the best of the proposed options. There is very little time left until the holiday, and nothing is ready in the kingdom. It was worth making an agreement with the most prestigious studio in the capital, but they were full of orders. The best solution was to invite Alexandra, who owns a sewing workshop on the outskirts of the capital. They are not very popular because of the brightness of their dresses, but it is for the best. There is no specific dress code for the event, which is a boon for the young lady. She won't have to try to find a discreet dress for the trip. The pink-haired lady leads the Duchess to a mirror in which a beautiful reflection in a white, open dress awaits. A slight smile lights up the faces of the acquaintances. Sasha continues to spin around, talking about how wonderful the hostess is. She herself did not believe that this could happen. Not a minute passes before the assistant shows up with a blue cloth. The girl in turn offers to try on another dress. Then everything started spinning and whirling like a non-stop whirlwind. The costume designer's eyes were shining as she suggested another dress, but in a different color. Hands reach out to the blonde, holding out fabric that doesn't fit at all, but it's imperative to try it on. The Duchess is ready to run away, but the ever-searching Alexandra is able to get anyone, having an excellent sense of manifestation. Sitting in a dress that seems to be too tight, Urania suggests taking a break and having some tea. She urgently needs air. Lena, who has been nearby all this time, carefully places her hand on his shoulder, and then cries out in surprise. The maid waves her arms and gives orders. She urgently needs water, and that is not up for discussion. The mistress is probably ill, and that is more important than anything else. Grabbing her friend's wrist, the brunette notices how tense the girl is, which means the dress is too heavy for her still fragile body. Out of nowhere, a pink-haired beauty appears, laughing a little. It's impossible, because their dresses are the lightest in the city. The girl still wouldn't leave her mistress, trying to calm her down with her touches. It didn't work very well, but it wasn't too bad either. The tired voice of a blonde cuts through, asking to find and bring here a servant who would look like a young lady. Instantly jumping up, the beauty assures that everything will be done in the best possible way. After all, you can rely on her without any unnecessary thoughts. Then the funnel with dresses started again. The worker showed another 10 dresses, asking her opinion. It is better not to know that the thing is bought only for one evening out. If a lady were asked what she wanted, she would definitely not include clothes on the list. All these garments are absolutely identical, so in fact there is nothing to choose from. Deciding to consult, the lady carefully bows her head and begins to whisper something in her friend's ear. She is choosing a dress for the first time, and this is not an easy task. Lena rolls her eyes, trying to accept reality. Usually, her mother bought all her clothes, or she had to wear her sister's clothes because she grew faster. Trying not to smile stupidly, the friend insists that from this day on, Urina goes shopping and to the shops. Perhaps this could help, so the girl nods her head in agreement without further ado. The main character should definitely start living a new life. You can't hold on to the past, but this present is extremely strange. The maid calls the lady by name. The girl's cheeks instantly turn red. The thing shown is clearly not what the person expected to see in the middle of the day. The beauty holds a nightgown in her hands, which is quite revealing. It seems to be more like a scrap of fabric than a decent garment. Covering her eyes with her hands, the question is on the tip of her tongue. This is some kind of ugliness, and the heroine definitely needs to know why she needs it. By defining the boundaries, the woman tries to explain that this is not at all ugly, but a completely good thing. To get closer to the Duke, young people must try and spend the first night in the best possible way. Even the smallest details must not be overlooked. Confusion and surprise are the only feelings that can be felt at the moment. It is even difficult for the girl to talk about this in the presence of anyone else. Lena seems to be quite belligerent. She continues her conversation, mentioning that it is better to change your nightgown every day to make a good impression. The maid seemed, at first glance, to have completely lost her mind. Approaching the mannequin, she began to imitate Cassius's behavior. The look switches somewhere to the side, and the lady remembers something of her own. The words about the first night bring their own memories and moments. That very day when the servants whispered among themselves. No one showed any respect, not a drop at all, trying to mock. The young woman sat in bed all alone. This is the same miserable time that she absolutely did not want to remember even if she wanted to. A dark night fell on the estate. The mountains were visible, but even they were covered in pitch darkness. There are only 2 people in the room. Gale bows obligingly, and then announces that the connection has been established and that conversation can now take place. The Duchess is full of determination. She should have done this a long time ago, but never had the opportunity. And now it is very much to her advantage. Cassius, it would seem, is sitting right in front of you. His amethyst eyes are quite penetrating and reach even from the other end of the line, in another city. A small ball is circling right next to the girl's face, waiting to be spoken to. Both people sit in complete silence, not daring to utter a word. The hands in the lacy gloves clench into fists a little. It's not that bad, because at least the connection was established. You just have to pull yourself together and tell her everything. She can't take it anymore, and she needs to do something about it. The young people start a conversation at the same moment. The man asks about his beloved's well-being, while the blonde voices her desire to talk about something. There is no stuttering, but the servants, standing just 2 meters from the sofa, are quite disturbing. They seem to be trying to eavesdrop on the conversation on purpose. Rennie's face is distorted by a strange grimace of thoughtfulness. Lately, her husband has been very worried about his health, as if she were made of sand and was about to fall apart. It is difficult to understand what is the reason for this behavior. We need to find out, but at this stage, the conversation should be about a completely different topic. Remembering her first attempt to ask for a divorce, the young lady wonders about the Duke's strange behavior that evening. Perhaps the girl is just winding herself up, but judging by the reaction of the servant standing behind her, this is not all fake. And Cass really does care about her too much. Trying to remain calm, the beauty asks another question. Perhaps there will be such a privilege, and the 2 men will leave the hall. Without even letting her finish, the guy abruptly interrupts his wife. According to him, this is impossible, which means both young men will remain in the room. Keeping calm becomes more and more difficult. Exhaling through her mouth, the heroine asks what the reason is. The answer is not long in coming. They have a duty, and they are responsible for the safety of the Duchess. If even one hair falls from Urania's head, they will pay for it with their lives. Without delaying another minute, Euclid apologizes, saying that time is running out and it is time for him to go. But before leaving, he asks him to take care of himself. I don't want to admit it, but the conversation turned out to be rather strange. Eyes widen while the guys behind literally cry from frustration. A strange feeling overwhelms you. You can't understand what exactly it is, but it's also completely impossible to refuse it. Morning has long visited the palace, bringing with it the sun, which brightly illuminates the beautiful garden. The snacks on the table only complete the picture. Irina tries not to talk to anyone. She needs to think about everything that's happening and maybe adjust her plan a little. The girls crowded behind her, asking the most obvious questions. They wanted to know if the lady liked the tea or the dress. Such things could easily be dispensed with. A funny thing can be observed. The attitude of those who had only recently mocked the poor woman has changed so abruptly. Ophelia literally came out of the ground. She goes a little deeper into the hall, asking if she was called. A joyful smile lights up the Duchess's face and everything around her too. Exclaiming the maid's name, the girl is sincerely happy about this outcome of events. Rising from her seat, the blonde straightens up and then orders everyone to leave. The only ones allowed to stay are Lena and Ophelia. Rumors will probably soon start to spread that the Duchess is firing all the servants except for two strange people. It's not the most important thing, and it won't hurt in any way. But it will become obvious that Rennie only trusts certain people. Trying to keep the conversation going, the beauty asks the maid about the child. It is not worth hiding that she really cares about their fate. Bowing and closing her eyes, the brunette thanks, saying that everything is great. None of this could have happened, but it turned out for the best. The girl didn't want much because all she wanted was the trust of the servants in this estate. No one was hounding her anymore, but no one trusted her either. Loyalty must be an absolute character trait. So much so that serving the master becomes the goal of one's whole life. Unexpected words escape Euclid's lips. Ophelia is put in charge of all the maids in the castle. Trying to object, the maid does not understand how this can happen and how she can even dare to do such a thing. It is not that it is a good thing. The best move is to dare. The beauty, closing her eyes, says that this is her personal assignment. The work is not too difficult, but for a brunette, it is beyond her capabilities. When the girl couldn't speak or see, everything was different. Now she is a nominal duchess and has the right to make her own decisions. The interlocutor's fist slowly clenches. The hand has not yet turned red, but the mood shows clear determination. Frowning, Ophelia almost screams. The mistress can count on her. She will have to do her job in the best possible way. Rejoicing at her quick success, the blonde does not understand how she managed it. In the future, she really hopes for help from her ally. If anyone disagrees with such a decision, the girl has the right to punish him. The mistress's orders are not subject to appeal. So be it. The heat from the scorching sun continues. It's hard to believe there's any air around. Carefully bringing the cup to her lips, the girl notices that the drink is warm. Lena really cares too much about her hostess. If you think about it, it's a good thing. There's no choice anyway, so the Duchess starts drinking from the mug. It's not quite funny and joyful, but my hands are shaking, as if a tremor is starting. There is a risk of dropping the cup at any moment. Looking at her palm, the girl realizes that the symptoms are getting worse. She urgently needs to attend the party and find a doctor. He needed to be completely healed before Cassius found out about anything. He clearly didn't want to think about the consequences for the 100th time that day. The party will take place today, and the healer will definitely be there. Sade promised to do everything in the best possible way. The same royal carriage rushes along the path. Someone's confused voice asks if everything will be all right, while the lady assures Lena that she has nothing to fear. The woman is dressed as a man, but she is very worried, and it is noticeable. She does not think at all about what if she is suddenly discovered, because it would be much worse if everything was reported to the Duke. The lady continues to try to calm her companion. If no one reports anything, then he won't know, and the whole path is absolutely free. The memories are transported back to a few days ago when, sitting on a chair, the beauty read Gale's stories about the servants who are important assistants of the demon of war. Running up to the girl, the man shouts something, pulling out the notebook and trying to explain himself as quickly as possible. Urania behaved quite normally, trying not to react, but at the same time subduing the butler with blackmail alone. Trying to play the kindest fairy from Wonderland possible, the lady promised that in exchange for help, she would not tell anyone about the erotic books. Almost through tears, the guy agrees to anything. just so that no one finds out what he does in his free time. A sparsely populated outskirts of the capital, one of the most abandoned places. Not many people dare to do everything in the best possible way and get there. It's not a good idea to arrive at a party in the Duke's carriage, which is why Sade found a suitable and accessible carriage. The pair reached the desired location quite quickly, as it did not take more than 15 minutes. Thoughts switched to the magical portal, but then servants and Cassius appeared in the distance. The man is busy with something and doesn't pay much attention to the girl who has just arrived in a carriage. However, not a minute passes before the young man's eyes grow larger and look more like pennies. He did not expect such a surprise. Strauss takes over the heroine's mind, and her brain quickly begins to work, looking for an excuse. It is completely unclear where Cass is from. The young man's face literally turned purple with anger. He couldn't believe that all this was happening to him and no one else. All you need to do is calm down and pull yourself together. I've already come up with a pretty good plan for such an unexpected encounter. Nothing works, as the menacing look immediately makes you forget about everything in the world. Lifting the hem of her dress, the beauty decides to climb back into the carriage. Before she could even set foot inside, a voice from behind called out to her. The Duke's question was, "So what is a lady doing in the capital?" The man, like a panther, finds himself right next to his wife in no time. He needs answers, and preferably as quickly as possible. Unable to bear such a distance, the girl tries to back away. It is too close and unbearably strange. The first words that come to mind are coming out of her mouth, and this is the simplest reason. The blonde came to see her boyfriend because even her route includes a townhouse. Her eyes dart up and down, but trying not to remain silent for more than a minute, the girl asks in a belligerent tone what happened, because perhaps she is not welcome here. Cassius doesn't say a word. He just continues to stare at his interlocutor. He has something to say, but his attention is distracted by something else. The Duchess is dressed very beautifully. A scarlet dress that is moderately revealing but at the same time quite cute, stones on top and such innocent eyes that are clearly part of the set. Euclid assures her that she is being cunning, since such attire was not worn to meet her husband. Turning her head away, the heroine notes that the young man clearly did not like the outfit. Looking herself up and down, Rennie doesn't understand what the problem is. She thought the dress was beautiful, especially since everyone was complimenting her. The guy changes the subject, talking about the danger of being here. So he asks to go to the townhouse, which he refuses. Asking again, the Duke clearly drew conclusions for himself because his betrothed had not come to him. She had some kind of meeting. Raising her index finger, the heroine tries to argue. She was on her way to the party, but decided to make a stop to meet Euclid. The guy's gaze changed with the speed of light. He asked again if it was really a party dress. Confirming the words of her interlocutor, the girl tells how she will be able to emphasize her status and integrate into society. Asking not to worry, the beauty talks about her companion, who is a reliable person and will help at any time. Excitement filled his mind, preventing him from thinking rationally. Euclid asked again what would happen if he were not around. Pausing for just a few seconds, the girl exhales and then recommends not to worry and just go about your business. Turning his head towards the carriage, the man asks pointedly if dressing up as a boy is part of the party. Cass chuckles and points out that maybe it's just a weird hobby of hers that he didn't know about. Then, turning back to his beloved, he continues his stream of sarcasm, remarking that perhaps this is the Duchess's passion. Deciding to calmly explain the situation, Urania says that she asked Lena to change clothes, since there is no other man in mind. As if he didn't understand the first time, the Duke asks again and clarifies whether she has any other partner. This seems strange. The young people continue to stand there silently and look at each other, not considering it necessary to say anything. The Duchess closes her eyes and decides it's her turn to mock. She confirms her suspicions once again, noting that Cass now seems to have health problems. His hearing has already suffered, but what will happen next? After a few seconds of this awkward moment, a horse appears along with a servant who considers it necessary to notify about the discovery of traces of pursuit. There is no limit to the surprise because the beauty did not expect that after the check someone would follow her. The interlocutor turns towards the young man, trying to remain calm and not start shouting or lecturing. Breathing in and out, the guy doesn't quite realize what's happening, but decides that the best option would be to simply turn to his wife. It looks like someone tried to attack, so you need to be much more careful. The guards should be near the carriage or even inside. Lena's head appears from the carriage, and then her whole body. The maid blinks her eyes in surprise, already ready to come to her friend's aid. Trying not to fall to the side or to the ground, the girl carefully grabs the maid's hand in the hope of help. Being around Cassius all the time, these trips did not lead to anything good. Being with him, the heart always beats faster than usual, and because of this, strength is lost. Already sitting on the soft seats in the carriage, the brunette continues to ask about the lady's well-being, to which she only waves her hand. Changing the subject, the blonde suggests forgetting about everything and finally going to this party. The fox mask appears first in the hands and then on the face of the main character. This is the very distinctive sign that helps to disguise herself. Even back then, when the friends wrote to each other about the masquerade, Sade wondered why the girl thought that they simply wouldn't recognize each other with masks on their faces. Rennie shouldn't talk nonsense, because a friend will recognize an acquaintance even if the face is completely under a mask, and this will be one of the easiest tasks. It is worth thinking about and remembering the outstanding hair color. This shade is found only in 1 out of 10,000 inhabitants of the Empire. Sometimes even the patience of the all-forgiving Urania runs out. You have to overcome yourself and finish reading the message. Callisto, although sometimes, still wanted to stop his eternal bullying. Even this time he fell silent, now seriously talking about solving the problem. For peace of mind, the beauty should wear a white fox mask, while Callisto will wear a black cat mask. The entrance to the party was quite heavily guarded, as there were several servants there who checked everything for sure. The blonde asks to see the invitation. In order to avoid creating personal problems and delays in the queue, the Duchess hands a piece of paper into the hands of the inspector. If you present this invitation, no one will check your identity and you will be able to enter immediately. Not even a few minutes pass before the fox and the graceful finger and her humble servant appear on the threshold. They clearly do not know where to begin and what to do. Literally melting with emotion, Lena says that she is very afraid of somehow making a mistake and ruining everything. She told me not to worry, but in the end, she herself is nervous. So much so that she will soon start shaking all over. She had never attended events of such a scale before. The girl was able to debut only when Elika took her by the hand, led her away, and left her to do her own thing at that event. Father and mother have tried their best to attract attention all their lives. Social life is one of the most important points. Even at the banquet held in honor of the wedding, all the glory went to the younger ones, and all because Urania was completely incapable of communicating with people. Considering all these details, it's still strange how the girls agreed to come here. The only hope is that everything will go well. Without thinking twice, the friends enter the hall through the open doors. It's hard to believe that they're finally there, so it's worth looking around again. Trying not to show it, the lady tries to smile, even if the smile comes out rather nervous and constrained. A little embarrassed, the blonde asks not to open her mouth in the presence of others because it will be better that way. Lena was assured that everything was fine, only to drag her here. The unexpected question came from the brunette. She suddenly became interested in what they do at a party with an auction. Usually, at such events, the first thing that was most important was an illegal auction where illegal things were sold. Another of the most important was the exchange of confidential information, the very same information that cannot be disclosed to anyone. As far as the heroine knows, in such places, men and women sleep with anyone. This is not the best detail, but the girl cannot tell the maid. Clearly nervous, Rennie tries to explain. According to her, there is simply an auction and other fun events going on here. It is clear from her companion's face that she does not really believe it. Grabbing her friend's shoulder with her hand, the heroine understands that she screwed up by forgetting what was happening here. But this is not a reason to leave. The young couple, trying not to show how bad things are, carefully walk towards the back of the room. Various people in dark masks wander around the room every now and then. It seems that they are all interested in who has come, so they stare, although this is not true. Two girls try to explore the situation as quietly as possible. You shouldn't show your face, even if it's in a brand new closed mask. There is no sign of Seed yet. I wonder where he is and whether he came. The night cat has disappeared without a trace. Thinking, the girl understands that she needs to think like her old friend. He has his own quirks. Turning her head, Urena tries to look around. Her eyes slowly widen as prey is found. Callisto, wearing a dark mask, is twirling arm in arm with some girl. His trajectory takes up almost the entire hall, and he is clearly enjoying it. Lena at this time slowly follows behind, but a waiter constantly appears on her way, offering champagne. The guy seems to have really gotten into the swing of things because he grabs the glass rather briskly, trying to drink the contents. Taking the liquid, the lady notes that she can't drink it here yet. It's not the best idea. Leaning over her friend's ear, Rennie says that she will leave her for a little while. There is one unfinished business that is connected with Sade. The maid's face betrays strong doubt, and it is obvious. She is not sure that her mistress should go all alone after the surveillance. Smiling, as if assuring her that everything will be fine, the blonde talks about her friend's personal security, who, if anything, will take care of her. Walking through the hall, the beauty gives instructions. If she does not arrive in an hour, then you should go to the carriage and wait for her there. Again, trying to hide her nervousness, the lady once again asks Lena not to talk to anyone. Sed peers into the distance, noticing a silhouette in a red dress and realizing that this is most likely his companion, who is already waiting. Coming a little closer, the blonde folds her arms in a pose that shows with her whole appearance that she is uncomfortable. The young couple are at the very back of the room, but something is alarming. Turning around, the Duchess notices that she feels someone's gaze on her. The brunette calls out to his friend, asking her to follow him so as not to waste time. She understands why this is being done. It's impossible to confuse, but most likely the lady just imagined it. Paranoia exists in everyone to some degree, so it's best to just calm down. The friends continue their march in silence. They have almost reached their destination. Already close to the coveted door, the girl suddenly notices that she had not noticed such a frantic crowd before. It's really strange why there are so many people here. They're like the sea, floating and floating, gathering in one place. The thought process is interrupted by none other than Callisto. He points to the side, saying that his room is there. It is in that room that all the deals take place. It is there that the guy was given information about the Dr. Uranius, but she is interested to know at least what kind of person he is. Realizing that the Duchess really needs to know, Sade decides not to hesitate and reveals that this is the wife of the White Eagle who hosted today's party. Phoebe Lillian is a fairly well-known person in the Empire. She cannot be ignored because everyone knows about her abilities. While gushing to his girlfriend, the man complains about how he went out of his way to find a wonderful doctor for a wonderful woman. There is no longer any strength to incite her friend, so the heroine promises to reward him generously as soon as the treatment is successfully completed. Bowing his head as if paying respect, the guy is happy with this outcome of events. Approaching one of the servants, the young man asks him to tell him that Callisto has arrived and is waiting at the entrance. Apparently, he is known here, but this does not help stop the nervousness of the beauty, who does not know what to expect. Standing in front of a woman, the lady tries to ask for help as politely as possible. She found it with the help of the guild. A beautiful woman in a great dress sits right in front of me. Her eyes are a little tired, but work is probably not waiting. The young man said goodbye right in front of the office. Wishing him luck, he assures that it will be needed because it is not easy to persuade such a doctor. He salutes by placing his fingers on his forehead, indicating that it is time to continue his service. As if he has no choice, Phoebe announces 2 rules. Even if the girl was brought by a trusted person, you can't take off your mask and talk about your identity under any circumstances. Surprise freezes on the Duchess's face. However, she does not think for long about why everything is happening this way. Looking away, she realizes that this is quite logical, since today is a masquerade, and her interlocutor's husband is hosting it. The conversation continues as Lillian asks what they can offer her in exchange for her help. The hand takes out a dark bag which probably contains pleasant contents. The lady opposite does not understand. Smiling, the beauty hands over the thing, asking if it is enough. She does not want to push. It is worth trying to find a common language. Phoebe's eyes drop down, examining and assessing the bag. It's probably important how valuable the contents are. The silence is too heavy on her ears, so the blonde starts to get very nervous. She can't believe that this won't be enough. Another identical bag falls on the table. I want everything to go as smoothly as possible, because the doctor is an important link in Uranius's plan. Trying to ask for at least a hint about the price, the maiden assumes that Lillian's services cost much more than she offered. Exhaling, the interlocutor declares that she is not particularly interested in money. Otherwise, she would not be treating people, but chasing after bills. Confusion is reflected on his face in a bright note. Side was right, because it will not be easy at all, and it will take hours to persuade. A good thought comes to mind. Perhaps if I demonstrate my strength and thereby somehow prove my importance, everything will work out. The hand drops and grasps the wrist with almost weightless movements. The bracelet awaits the pressure to release the force. The woman is a doctor, which means she might be interested in Uranius's abilities. No one promises victory, but it's worth trying to take part. At first, the girl always walked around confused because she didn't know what was going on. But now she understands what that black shadow is around people. The dark manifestation could be in completely different places. The connection was never traced. If she concentrates, the heroine manages to see even the smallest manifestations of shadows. That is, diseases. The Duchess's eyes widen sharply. Power flows into her veins, letting her know that everything around her is now under her control. Turning her gaze to the hooded man, the girl asks if he has also come to receive help from the healer. Bowing her head, Phoebe answers, saying no. According to her, he is perfectly healthy, but he came to get checked. The shadow near the man's head is quite thick. He can't be okay, so there is no certainty. Perhaps the person is hiding the fact that he is sick or does not know anything at all. It is strange that those present did not notice this. Putting a finger to his mouth, Rennie asks what if the lady was wrong and he still needs help. Lillian calmly denies because she examined this patient yesterday and no symptoms were found. She wants to know what the assumption is based on. Trying not to sound as crazy as possible, the blonde says that when something is wrong with a person, she sees the sore spot. Perhaps, unfortunately, the heroine can also see her own ailments, even if she doesn't want to. Agreeing, the woman says that perhaps they found nothing because the disease only manifested itself very recently. It is hard to believe, but it sounds quite interesting. Still, it wouldn't be logical to take some strange girl's word for it. It's worth just conducting a new examination, and then everyone around will see for themselves. Phoebe's students, one interrupting the other, shout about fraud because the girl just showed up at the party, wasting time and doubting the doctor's qualifications. The girl bows her head, realizing that she is telling the pure truth. She has nothing to be ashamed of, and there is no point in throwing her out, because you can just see for yourself. The maids in the background continue to shout that the beauty who has arrived is crazy, but Lillian has a completely different opinion. The voice asks to come closer, so Urania's face immediately lights up with joyful fire. The hands still take the bag and place it in the doctor's palm. She should accept payment, at least in part. Smiling, the interlocutor declares that she will accept the gold, at least as a sign that she has worked hard. It's unbelievable, but it looks like the most difficult man on earth just agreed to a deal and everything is going to be fine now. Bending over the lady's ear, the fox knows the location of the pain, somewhere on the back of the head and near the ear, and apparently everything is quite serious. Switching her gaze, the woman clarifies, asking again whether the person is ready to take responsibility if she made a mistake. It is not difficult for Rennie to agree. She is ready because she is absolutely sure of her abilities. It won't be difficult for Phoebe to understand whether the Duchess is telling the truth or not. But if she is simply asking for help, which she really needs. Lillian can do nothing but nod silently. She really hopes that this is all true because she wants to help too. Calling one of the servants, the mistress asks Janie to bring paper and a pen to fill out the form. The doctor asks to fill out a paper and write your address so that it will be possible to contact later when everything has been checked. The letter is complete, and the only request left is that Phoebe not write her name on the envelope immediately after sending it. The estate had quite a beautiful, vast garden and a huge number of flowers. It is unthinkable and extremely wonderful. The lady holding the hem of her dress goes out into the street, constantly looking around. Finally, it's all over and the face can be free. Urania takes off her fox mask and takes a deep breath. The girl asked to wait in the carriage, but if the maid was there, then it was worth just waiting. The strange sound was not a very pleasant thing. A strange cart, covered with thick fabric, stands just a few meters away. The sounds do not stop, and it is starting to be a little scary. The heroine's face literally stretches out from fear. Her shoulders begin to shake a little, because everything that is happening just won't calm down. Trying to remain calm, she seems to be asking herself what is going on there. A second later, he feels a shockwave, or a real one, and Rennie is abruptly thrown aside from everything that is happening, not giving him a chance to escape. A huge monster crawls out onto the road. One head looks more like a mythical goat, and the other like a snake. Teeth measuring almost a meter inspire confidence. Fear is increasingly enveloping the beauty's insides. Where could this beast have come from if no one destroyed the artifact and released them? Her thoughts quickly turn to the whistle she was given for self-defense. It's worth at least trying before it's too late. Determination knows no bounds. There is no choice because I want to live much more. Taking a deep breath, the girl applies the object to her mouth and then blows with all her might, hoping for help from the outside. A new wave takes over the whole body. Because of the wind, nothing is heard, and the monster is approaching and is getting closer despite the distance. She urgently needs to pull herself together and try again. These are the only thoughts that haunt Rennie, because if you don't try, you'll never know. The mouth is already opening to pounce. It looks too ominous, as no one expected the end to come so quickly. I want to close my eyes and not think about anything else. I want to forget about everything in this world. But out of nowhere, a man in a black cloak appears. The thing flutters in the wind, while a sharp sword cuts off the head of the monster, which was already closer than a meter from the Duchess. From the hair and facial features, one could understand who exactly had come to save the girl. The surprised eyes widen even more. While the beauty is quietly surprised, because she did not expect to see the Duke right here and now. As he finishes the job, the guy turns around and starts to lecture. He says that this may be Urania's way of protesting her refusal to get a divorce. Sighing, the young man remarks that he will soon go crazy, but no one listens to him anymore. The blonde asks where he is from if he has business. Putting the sword back into the holster in his bosom, the man looks away tiredly. It makes sense why he ended up here. Not quite understanding what is happening, the girl tries to comprehend and digest the words that were just spoken. Changing the subject, the guy states that what's more important now is that his wife hates him so much that she won't even let him touch her toes. Squinting, as if not understanding what kind of madness this is, the Duchess wonders what kind of nonsense her interlocutor is talking about. Both have absolutely nothing to say. They do not understand what the problem is with each other, because everything is much simpler than it seems. Trying to be the first to start a conversation, the beauty still asks how the man ended up here. As if ignoring the question, the guy asks how his wife ended up at the party, although she didn't tell him anything. Looking down, Urania mentions Maid, who invited her a long time ago, and she couldn't refuse her old friend. The Duke can't help but seem overly sad. He even looks a little unhappy, considering that nothing bad or terrible has happened. According to him, the girl is playing with his feelings. It's hard to believe that a person in the prime of life is capable of saying such a thing. In this case, everything is just the opposite. Again, starting the same topic, the young lady folds her hands, apologizing and saying that the Duke's honor will not be spoiled, because the promise not to do so has already been given. Asking again, the young man tries to believe everything that is happening. The husband came here only because he was worried that she would tarnish his family. The menacing voice makes it clear that the jokes are over. Honor is given to this man by birthright, and he certainly does not seem like someone whose dignity can be taken away or denigrated. The girl recoiled in surprise. She couldn't believe that all this was happening for a completely different reason. Trying not to appear even more strange, Cassius bends down to be on the same level as the woman. The eyes seem to be throwing thunder and lightning, while the guy says that the interlocutor, like the honor, belongs only to him. Squinting her eyes, the heroine is indignant, because she is not a thing to belong to someone. She is her own mistress. Leaning even closer to his betrothed's face, Cass repeats her tirade menacingly. The couple made a vow to be together forever and never break it. Mild disgust can be read simply by the emotions. The Duchess did not understand what he was talking about. Something else happens at the wrong time. The man's gaze shifts to the lady's feet, and then he notices a shoe that has slipped off. The guy squats down, picking up a pretty shoe from the ground. He should do what he started. Without thinking twice, he asks if they will let him help him put his shoe back on his foot. An outrageous request. But who is ideal? Leaning down and looking down, the lady doesn't even know what to say. This must have been discouraging and stupefying, but there was no choice anyway. A hand in a black glove, soft as cotton wool, takes the main character's leg in order to finish what was started. Every day it becomes more and more interesting why my husband behaves this way. It doesn't seem like he doesn't care. While continuing to do his job, the guy starts talking about divorce. He really doesn't want to do it, and there's one pretty obvious reason for that. The foot finally finds its place. The shoe fits like a glove, but it certainly interrupts the man, who paused for a second. The Duke does not want to lose Uranius. This is his honest answer, and it is truly believable. A silent question like an unbearable weight insists on the beauty's face. She expected anything, but certainly not such an outcome of events. Kneeling and placing his hand on his chest, Cassius asks to be allowed to be hers, even if she cannot or does not want to belong only to him. A man who kneels before her so that she will believe his intentions. All the moments when it seemed that Euclid hated his wife so much come rushing into his memories. He did not allow her to leave the bedroom for the sake of safety. Was he trying to prevent a divorce or just to improve her attitude towards him? Does this mean that Cass doesn't hate the Duchess and only wants the best for her? The nastiness was not in the amount expected because everything was completely different. Still kneeling, the man asks to stop thinking about divorce. Cass seems to seriously consider Renee his wife and a member of the Euclid family. He doesn't care what she thinks, because it's the truth. The Duke stretches out his hands, trying to somehow change everything around him. Even if it is not strong, it works. It is difficult to believe in the sincerity of the words, since the man probably wants to make her his property. This is always the case with aristocrats. Deciding to ask a question, Urania asks again if he really doesn't want a divorce, to which she receives a sneer. It seems she wasn't listening to Cassius at all. Obviously, getting a divorce won't be easy, which means the only way out is to hide your illness from him until the very end. The conversation is interrupted by someone's voice shouting the Duchess's name at the top of its lungs. Sid hurries towards the couple, seeming absolutely happy, as if nothing had happened and he was just passing by. The heroine seemed about to explode. This impudent fellow first left her all alone and then showed up as if nothing had happened and everything was fine. Cass, following the beauty's gaze, understands her indignation, even without knowing the full horror of the situation. Lost in thought, the husband comes up with another stroke of genius. It's all because of this man. The blonde wanted a divorce because of him. Forgetting his name, the guy said that the blonde loves this tailed one. This became noticeable a long time ago. The guy's gaze doesn't focus on anything, but it's still worth waiting. The eyes widen in surprise for the umpteenth time. The woman exclaims, trying to understand what nonsense he just blurted out. Almost screaming, the girl exclaims that she couldn't even dream of such a thing in her nightmares, to which she receives an atypical answer. The Duke is happy about this and feels relieved. The shock takes over the girl even more. She did not expect such a reaction and such a question at all. Already approaching the scene of the incident, Callisto, as if nothing had happened, asks what happened here and why such a pogrom. No longer able to restrain herself, the girl begins to almost scream. She wonders if he wants to say anything else or what. Pretending that everything is normal, Sade grins, adding only that he is very good and beautiful. Trying not to hurt the heroine's fragile ego, he asks if she is okay. This is extremely important, even if said jokingly. The blonde comments on the situation, saying that she is okay only thanks to Cass, and then falsely thanks the man for leaving her alone. Callisto, it would seem, does not hear anyone, but simply enjoys the weather, brazenly ignoring her interlocutor. Noticing a guy standing next to her, the brunette asks him why he decided to go all this way. The girl's emotions are overflowing because it's unthinkable. Saving face, the young man talks about an illegal auction. He had to check, but maybe someone knows something. Smiling, the friend, trying to remain casual, suddenly says that the imperial family has forbidden giving out details. The war with the monsters ended a long time ago. But despite this, sometimes they still get into the world through the breaches. Not long ago, a decree was issued that the monsters must be killed as soon as they are discovered. Selling the creatures is considered treason, and this is what Sade is accused of, even if he refuses to admit it, since his job is to investigate. The guy shows with his whole appearance that he is not happy, but he tries to communicate as politely as possible. And this is strange. The most interesting thing is that Callisto even agreed, because in his past life, the Emperor's family was killed. It is also worth remembering that the blonde was locked in the tower, and the brunette hated Cassius so much that he died trying to kill him. Everything is different now, and everything is fine. There is no point in focusing on something so unimportant. The Duke shows his disgust with all his might, but Sade says that as a dirty mercenary, he is given dirty work. Callisto is indeed a good talker, and so he now mentions an important piece of evidence that was destroyed during the battle. The soft features were filled with anger. The guy was outraged that his friend's girlfriend could die, and he didn't even bat an eyelid. Sade claimed that by inviting Urania, he could have taken care of her himself, but Cass resisted this because nothing had happened. The cold tension only grew, and it seemed that these two could freeze with their temperament. Turning their heads, the young men noticed the guards who were quickly approaching the scene. It took them a while. The lady abruptly throws it aside a little. The most unexpected manifestation, but this time she knows exactly what it is from. The gaze switches to the place where Sade literally just stood, who again disappeared without a trace. Choking and coughing from the stage smoke, the beauty wonders why she couldn't leave like a normal person. Cassius raises his hand and then covers the young lady's body with his cloak. There is no logic to his actions, but he doesn't care. The eyes themselves begin to slowly close. It is not clear why this happened, but a strange tingling sensation is felt throughout the body. Perhaps it is because the girl has warmed up, but now she only feels extremely tired. With her hand around the beauty's head, the girl snuggles up to the warm body. Cass asks if she is tired, to which she answers positively. The man offers to carry his beloved, and a second later she finds herself in the Duke's arms. Holding the lady in his arms, the guy walks forward. They should get to the carriage as quickly as possible, but at the same time not run. Almost falling asleep, the blonde asks if they are angry with her. It seems that this is now her favorite question. A surprised voice asks her why she thought so, to which she does not receive a normal answer. It turns out that the young man is thinking about how to punish the knights who were obliged to protect the Duchess. The young lady suddenly perks up and looks Euclid straight in the eye, asking if they've been here. It makes sense because they're ordered to follow everywhere. As she calms down, the girl realizes that she was not imagining things in the hall, because it was most likely one of the servants watching her. In future, you need to be even more careful, otherwise all your plans may go down the drain. Arriving at the estate, a man of medium build appears right in front of the young people. His name is Venster, and he is the butler of this estate. Still not even thinking of letting the heroine go, the Duke asks where the bedroom is so he can go there. The man leads the couple to the door and then helpfully talks about the double bed that has been placed in the room for convenience. The girl thinks about something, but only for a moment. This bed is meant for both of them. While putting his wife down on the floor, the guy bows, even if it is not necessary, and then advises her to have a good rest. Hope lights up in his eyes, but quickly fades when the girl asks what will happen next. It is immediately clear to her that her husband is leaving. Confirming Euclid's guess, the young man says that everything is fine, and if anything happens, you can ask the servants who are here for help. Just a few minutes later, the main character is left completely alone in a huge room. Lying on her bed, Urania thinks about her wedding night. Then she was also alone. All alone in an empty room with no people. This is not the most pleasant to perceive, but more acceptable moments also pop into my head. The Duke is on one knee, asking the girl to make him hers, because he does not want to lose her under any pretext. Closing her eyes, Renee realizes that perhaps it was all a lie, because even after those words, she is probably so disgusting to Cassius that he does not want to sleep with her. The bright morning sun shines on the Duke of Euclid's estate. No one has the right to cancel it or spoil the mood. In front of the lady on the table, there is a small tub with water for morning washing. It was brought by the maid. Wiping her face, the lady apologizes for not letting her rest because she can only trust Lena, to which she receives objections. According to her companion, everything is fine, and it is her duty. The maid's eyes were literally black from lack of sleep and tears. This could not please or at least somehow soften the situation. Yesterday, after everything that happened, Lena came running, apologizing and crying nonstop. She was very sorry. It turned out that when the girl was waiting for her mistress, she was surrounded by strange girls who would not give the poor lady any peace. Squinting a little, the Duchess considers giving the maid a vacation. She never thought she would make such an attractive guy. The announcement came, and then a huge box was brought into the room. The Duke had deigned to send a gift for his wife. Sighing in surprise, the beauty asked again if this was really addressed to her, while her friend nearby advised her to quickly put on her outfit. Smiling, the hostess agrees, but only because she has asked so sincerely, and not because this gift is from her betrothed. The dark velvet dress fits the skin in soft layers, allowing you to breathe deeply. It's simply wonderful. Adjusting her hem, the woman does not quite understand the essence of everything that is happening, but the garment is truly wonderful. It is worthy of praise. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, the Duchess once again raises an eyebrow in surprise. Cassius likes this. Compliments from all the maids in the room pour in like an endless river. The Duke is bound to fall in love as soon as he sees his mistress in this dress. Lena looks proud, while the other maidens still can't get away from Urania. This is the real power of the lady's beauty. Thinking about everything that is happening, the beauty notes that this is the first time she has seen such an unusual reaction. The card will fall on the other side, and since the blonde has been reborn, perhaps she will be able to become worthy of being respected by the servants. Things started to change little by little, and it was undeniable that these events were not bad at all. It was a pleasure to treat oneself this way. The single most important duty at the moment is making to-do lists. If the maid is the Duke's wife, then she must get down to business. Sitting at the table, the heroine sorts through some papers. She has a lot of free time, so it's worth checking some documentation. The servants here always relied solely on Cass's orders, but in his absence, no one knew what to do or what was worth doing. This is extremely sad because in addition to all this, there is no head butler or head maid in the house. There is nothing surprising here. The young couple did not appoint anyone here, and the servants rely entirely on them. Calling the man, the lady asks his opinion. She needs at least 3 candidates for the position of butler and maid. Venster remained calm until Urania declared that after this, all the servants would have to cast their vote. He exclaims, not believing that the mistress wants to leave the choice to the servants. The young maiden only smiles with the corner of her mouth. The heroine assures that she would gladly do it herself, but she doesn't know anything about it, which means it would be right to do it differently. The servants themselves will have the right to choose the one they like the most. There is no choice, and so it will be. The guy doesn't even dare to blink, continuing to stare out the window. He likes this order, but no one knows how it will end. The girl clasps her hands and gives the butler another smile when he unquestioningly agrees to carry out the order. It's been several hours since the girl started her attempts to sort out the papers. It's really extremely tiring. A servant knocks on the door and then enters with a tray in his hands. He informs the lady of a letter that is addressed specifically to her. Opening the letter, it turns out that it was sent to Madame Phoebe. At the entrance to the White Eagle, you only need to say your name and they will let you in. Surprise, but at the same time joy, envelops the blonde's consciousness. It is hard to believe that Lillian is inviting her to prescribe treatment. By lighting one of the candles, the lady burns the paper so that there will be no evidence. It seems that what was said at the party helped a lot. Lena is in complete confusion, running around and asking why this was done. Trying to calm her interlocutor, the woman switches to Venster, saying that she needs a carriage. Very soon, there will be a road to another estate. The White Eagle estate is called that way, probably because of the snow-white interior. Even the floors are polished to a shine in a beautiful color. The lady and the maid go inside, looking around as if trying to understand what exactly is going on here and where to look for the right person. A butler materializes at the entrance and asks what brought the Duchess here. She was invited by Madame Phoebe. Realizing that these are guests who have been expected for more than an hour, the girl offers to follow her to get to the right place. Turning to Lena, the lady asks to wait for her here, and all questions about safety are refused, since it is absolutely, absolutely clean here. A beauty in a hat walks around the estate, waiting to meet the doctor. There is a sense of excitement, but this is only because everything will finally be decided. Approaching the right door, the lady appears in all her glory. Only 5 minutes have passed since her arrival.